This is a world of ghosts and monsters. Here, humans can unleash the potential of the soul to awaken various kinds of special powers. They are strong enough to slay demons and destroy everything. This awakening of the human race is called the awakening of physical strength. One night, amid heavy rain and lightning, on various skyscrapers, some screens reported about a man driving a hearse killing a melon seller on the side of the road. A shirtless blue-haired man in a dumpster screams that this world is too crazy. The person who had just woken up from the trash was Lin. He admits his hair may be messy, but his head is not. Another person who crossed into another world was invincible at the start of the game, but he was different. He was just an ordinary person with no talent. Only trash will be killed and thrown here and there. But he had not expected to cross the world in such a disgraceful manner. He was determined that if he found the killer, he would make sure to kill him in the cruelest way possible. Suddenly, Lin Xiao heard something sound. He saw a man peeing on the wall. Noticing Lin's presence, the man cracked his neck and shot Lin Xiao a terrifying look. Lin Xiao was immediately frightened seeing his terrifying face. The man also lunged at Tang Ling Xiao and was about to pounce on him. The monster then opened its mouth and invited Lin Xiao to enter its mouth. Lin Xiaoyang was frightened and screamed for help. Immediately afterward, a large pair of scissors was thrown and cut the monster's neck. Lin Xiao was shocked to see what had just happened. The dead monster then turned into smoke. After taking back her scissors, a beautiful woman came and greeted Lin. Having been saved, Lin Xiao was grateful to him. The woman then approached Lin Xiao and asked if she was pretty. Without thinking twice, Tang Ling Xiao replied that he was the best. The woman then showed her monster figure and asked if she was still beautiful. Lin Xiaoshok saw that. He thought she was a beautiful hero who had come to save him. He even almost fell in love. The tear-mouthed woman then clung to Lin Xiao and asked him to quickly answer her, then licked Lin's cheek. Even though he felt that he was in danger, he who was being slapped by the slit-mouthed woman felt that this was amazing. But living in the moment, living is all that matters. If he said beautiful, then he would open his mouth. And if he said he wasn't attractive, he was sure this woman would kill him right away. He was so confused about how to choose it. As Lin Xiao didn't answer, the tear-mouthed woman called out her scissors again and intended to make Lin Xiao speak. Lin Xiao also thought that it was over and begged someone to save him. Not long after, a system appeared and detected that the host was in danger. The divine system has finally connected. Lin Xiao didn't understand what was happening because time stopped and he couldn't move his body. Then, in front of him appears 3 choices and he has a time limit of 5 seconds. The first choice, run away, but will be chased by the tear-mouthed woman. The mission reward is reinforcement pills. Option 2, kneel and beg for mercy. The tear-mouthed woman would make another wish. The mission reward is a cleansing pill. Option 3, if he was going to die under the lips of a beautiful woman, then he could simply kiss her. The mission reward is an SSS-rank supernatural ability pack. Looking at the options before him, Lin Xiao thought that this might just be the legendary system. Seeing the third choice's reward, Lin Xiao thoughtlessly chose the third choice. He also grabbed the shoulder of the tear-mouthed woman and pulled her to kiss him. The tear-mouthed woman who was being kissed didn't understand why Lin Xiao was doing this to her. The kiss from Lin Xiao finally ended. The torn-mouthed woman also said that she was no longer pure. Seeing the tear-mouthed woman's expression, Lin Xiao thought that he didn't expect her to be this cute. He now convinced himself that when he met a female monster, he had to use his love to convince her. The tear-mouthed woman then separated herself from Lin Xiao and was about to leave. But before he left, the slit-mouthed woman introduced herself as Hong Ye and said that she would come back. Hong Ye finally left and disappeared from Lin's sight. A moment later, the system confirmed that Lin Xiao had completed the mission and an SSS-rank supernatural power would be randomly selected. So to receive the reward, the system asked Lin Xiao to chant a draw spell, hitting the darkness with lightning. Lin Xiao also asked who would shout such embarrassing dialogues. But he decided to forget about it because he had just kissed a stranger, but was still afraid of embarrassment. With full confidence, Lin Xiao chanted his raffle spell. Soon after, a creature appeared in the sky and flashed lightning at Lin. Lin Xiaoyang was shocked by the lightning and screamed in pain. People who were not far from that place also witnessed the incident. One of them, wearing high heels, recognized that it was a heavenly thunderstorm. The woman did not expect that someone would awaken a special power of S rank or higher rank, because there was only one man in Changlan City who had surpassed S-class. He wondered who this person was, but he suspected that it might be a descendant of that man. After the creature disappeared into the air, Lin Xiao finally stopped being struck by the lightning. The system congratulated Lin Xiao on obtaining the SSS class ability, Qi Yu. The system explains that the host strength is very weak, so the SSS class ability, Qi Yu, can complement the host's strength, and can open other locked parts. Based on the memories from this body, Lin Xiao remembered that the general strength limit of this world was the S-class, and he had succeeded in awakening the SSS class. Lin Xiao was excited because he was about to become invincible. Lin Xiao laughed because he was so excited. With the strength of this SSS rank, he was certain that in a short time, he would become a big player and rise to the pinnacle of life. He can't wait to spend his life easily. However, the system suddenly reported that it detected a large horde of ghosts and monsters around the host, and requested Lin Xiao to evacuate as soon as possible. Feeling a bad breath, Lin Xiao started to run away because he didn't have the strength to fight against him. Lin Xiao drove for half an hour and finally found his way home. Seeing his house, he did not expect that his house was so luxurious. He felt a little nervous because it was the first time he entered a house this big. When he opened the door of his house, he saw his sister waiting for him. He asked why his sister came home so late. Lin Xiao was surprised because he almost forgot that he had a cute sister named Lin Shi. Seeing her brother covered in bruises, a worried Lin Shi asked what happened to him. Lin Xiao also reasoned that it was raining and the road was a little slippery, so he accidentally slipped. Lin Shi then said that she made ginger soup and asked him to drink it. Lin Xiao was happy because he had such a good little brother. As far as Lin Xiao remembered, he was adopted by the Lin family when he was young. After his foster parents died, he lived with his sisters, Lin Hua and Lin Shi. They are both very talented and blessed by God, and Lin Xiao is the only loser who is always insulted. 3 years ago, Lin Hua was selected to join the special division because of his perfect qualifications. Due to his busy schedule, he rarely came home, so Lin Xiao was the one who had to take care of their little brother. But the original owner of this body was very stubborn and couldn't even take care of his own body and was indifferent to his sister. While drinking the soup, Lin Xiao thought that the owner of this body didn't know how to be grateful. Not long after, someone shouted for Lin Xiao and told Lin Xiao to come out, making Lin Xiao spit out the soup. He was so annoyed that he almost choked to death. The one who screamed and broke in was a girl. According to his memories, that girl was Chu Junyao, his childhood friend, and she had also appeared in a women's magazine. He also asked what Chu Junyao was doing here. Chu Junyao then scolded Lin Xiao because this morning Lin Xiao confessed his love to her in front of the class with a loudspeaker. Because he felt tainted, Chu Junyao demanded that Lin Xiao give him an answer. Hearing that, Lin Xiao also remembered that after he confessed his love to Chu Junyao, he was killed around the school. He wondered if these two incidents might be related. But right now the most important thing is to take care of Chu Junyao. He then said that he was only joking because he didn't dare to like a ferocious tiger like him. He didn't even dare to accept it for fear that Chu Junyao might finish him off at any moment. Hearing that, Chu Junyao was annoyed and kicked at Lin Xiao, but Lin Xiao dodged his kick and peeked at Chu Junyao's underwear. Lin Xiao looked very happy to see him. Chu Junyao scolded Lin Xiao and called him a pervert for peeping on him. Lin Xiao reasoned that he had no intention of doing so, and asked whether Chu Junyao didn't feel guilty after making an innocent child like him see that. Feeling disgusted with Lin Xiao, Chu Junyao intended to beat up Lin Xiao and told Lin Xiao to watch his mouth. But Lin Shi arrived to protect Lin Xiao and asked Chu Junyao to stay away from her brother. Not wanting to talk to a child, Chu Junyao stopped himself. He then warned Lin Xiao that tomorrow was the school's special ability testing day. Only those who can awaken a C rank or higher rank can enter Changlan Academy. And he told that he had awakened the strength of rank A, so he will be sent to Changlan Academy and have a bright future. Meanwhile, Chu Junyao believed that in this life it would be impossible for Lin Xiao to follow in his footsteps. So he suggested that Lin Xiao enter a Tier 3 university and become a commoner at the bottom of society. Hearing that, he thought that he had awakened an SSS-rank special power. Raji can't be an ordinary person. Shortly thereafter, a task from the system appeared. He had to choose between not answering, apologizing to Chu Junyao and agreeing with him, and talking back to Chu Junyao and vowing not to acknowledge his strength. Even though the second choice's prize was much more profitable, Lin Xiao refused it. He decided to choose the third option. He also told Chu Junyao that not only would he continue walking the spiritual path, but he would also enter Changlan Academy with his strength. After saying that, Lin Xiao felt that he was cool. Hearing Lin Xiao's statement, Chu Junyao only laughed and said that everyone can brag. Lin Xiao, who saw Chu Junyao walking away, said that Chu Junyao would regret it sooner or later. Lin Xi also encouraged Lin Xiao and said that he must be able to awaken spiritual power. In the middle of the night, while Lin Xiao was in a deep sleep, Hong Ye finally managed to find Lin Xiao. He also demanded that Lin Xiao be responsible for the rest of his life for taking his first kiss for granted. Morning had come, and Lin Xiao was panicking because he would be late. Seeing his brother leaving, Hong Ye wished his brother good luck. Lin Xi believed that her brother was the best and would not let her sister down. Lin Xiao, who was running in a hurry, was exhausted and felt like his kidneys were going to die. Not only that, last night he dreamed of sleeping with Hong Ye. He felt weird because it seemed like it was really happening. Lin Xiao had finally arrived at Changlan High School. Inside the conference hall, Chu Junyao wondered why no one was in position yet. A moment later, an announcement appeared asking the examinees to line up in order to take the exam. Seeing the students making a fuss, Chu Junyao said that they were the worst of the other sessions. On the other hand, Lin Xiao narrowed his eyes on the crowd and asked the person in front of him if this was the evacuation location. That person got annoyed and told Lin Xiao to be quiet, but he was shocked because the person he saw should have died. So he asked what Lin Xiao was doing here. According to his memories, he was Yang Yi. And because Yang Yi liked Chu Junyao, the two of them were enemies. So Lin Xiao suspects that it was Yang Yi who sent someone to kill him earlier and decides not to let him go. The spiritual ability test has finally begun. An examiner explains that this exam will determine their future, and only students with rank C or above have a chance to enter Changlan Academy. He then called the first participant named Xiao Ming. He got nervous because he was the first to be called. Nervously, he checked his aptitude. He also stocks up when he discovers that his ability is a rank F frying pan. Then, many other participants failed, such as getting the ability of food sticks and toilet paper. The other participants who witnessed that laughed at them. A moment later, it was finally Yang Yi's turn. After examining his abilities, it was found that his ability was that of an A-rank ability, the Wolf Ghost. Chu Junyao didn't expect that Yang Yi could increase his strength to this extent and awaken a great ability. Next was Lin Xiao's turn to catch Chu Junyao's attention. Lin Xiao confidently walked towards his test site. The other students laughed at Lin Xiao for having that much courage. There were even those who bet that he would eat dog excrement if Lin Xiao awakened his powers. Yang Yi was sure that Lin Xiao would only embarrass him himself. Seeing everyone laugh at Lin Xiao when they saw him, he was sure this must be because he was too handsome. So he bowed his head. But the examiner told Lin Xiao that his pants were open, making him feel embarrassed. With an embarrassing pose, Lin Xiao touched the crystal ball. Everyone present was astonished. Lin Xiao, who believed himself to be the greatest, was boasting, even though the screen behind him showed that he had FFF rank ability. The examiner also noted that Lin Xiao's ability Lin Xiao was disabled, or he was discovered. Lin Xiao was confused by what happened. The other students laughed at Lin Xiao, who had come to humiliate him. Yang Yi, who witnessed that, laughed and said that it was a suitable choice for someone without ability. Lin Xiao didn't understand and was sure that something must be wrong, but suddenly someone appeared behind him. He realized that she was Hong Ye, the female ghost. Hong Ye said he was here to help Lin Xiao. A moment later, people noticed Lin Xiao's rising potential on the screen. The examiner was shocked to see that his last measurement was a potential S rank. Chu Junyao, who witnessed it, thought that it wasn't bad. and Yang Yi didn't understand how it could be. In the end, even though Lin Xiao's strength was SSS rank, he had S-grade potential, so the examiners decided that Lin Xiao passed. Lin Xiao was also happy with this result. At 10 minutes after waiting for the second exam, Yang Yi approached Lin Xiao and said that trash was trash, even though it had such high potential. Hearing that, Lin Xiao laughed and asked if he was jealous of her potential. Yang Yi was offended and grabbed Lin Xiao by the collar. He challenged Lin Xiao to fight him. Immediately after being challenged by Yang Yi, the system gave 3 choices. Put on a calm expression full of confidence, then ignore Yang Yi, fulfill Yang Yi's request, and face Yang Yi, and solve true love's grudge. Without thinking, Ling Xiao chose the second option and punched Yang Yi in the face. Since everyone knew who was asking for a fight, Lin Xiao didn't feel afraid at all. Yang Yi was angry because even his father had never hit him. Soon someone stopped their fight. A woman who stops fighting, they say that the second-level practice exam will start soon. So he asked the disciple who had passed the awakening ability. Seeing the snake symbol on the sleeve of his jacket, Lin Xiao was sure that the woman was from Changlan Academy. While on the way to the second exam venue, the previous lady introduced herself as Su Jiang, a first-year student at Changlan Academy and their examiner. He says that the second level of the practice exam is very important. Those who passed would directly be able to enter Changlan Academy and become official disciples. Lin Xiao, who was staring at Su Jiang's body lasciviously, thought that Su Jiang's body was steady. But he was caught by Su Jiang making him look at Lin Xiao like he saw something very disgusting. Suddenly, the bus driver was surprised because there was a bunch of bats coming from inside the tunnel. The bats then hit the windshield of the bus, causing the bus driver to panic and lose his balance on the bus. Lin Xiao bumped his head because of that. He then got out of the bus and asked why they could overturn. Upon seeing the bats charging at them, Lin Xiao didn't understand where these strange bats had come from. But seeing Su Jiang's reaction asking what was going on made Lin Xiao think that Su Jiang didn't know anything. Su Jiang then asked everyone to get rid of these monsters. Watching them starting to fight, Lin Xiao felt something was wrong. Amidst this chaos, Yang Yi seized the opportunity to finish off Lin Xiao. Not far from them, a single bat shot up to attack them. Yang Yi caught it and threw it to Lin Xiao. But Lin Xiao kicked the bat back. With his claws, Yang Yi tore the bat apart and said that he would not let go of Lin Xiao. Soon enough, Su Jiang finished off the rest of the bats, and they finally won. Yang Yi immediately changed his attitude and said that he had just warmed up. A moment later, there was an earthquake. Suddenly, chains appeared from the ground and tied everyone up. The female student who was caught screamed for help because she couldn't hold it in. It wasn't long before someone came riding a motorcycle. Lin Xiao could feel an extremely strong ghost scent from the man. The man then got off the motorbike and was happy because one of the prey looked good. He approached the girl and asked her to play a tongue game. Seeing his woman being touched by the man, one of the students shouted at him not to touch his woman. The man approached the student and intended to play with him. But Su Jiang broke the chains that bound him and told the man to stop. Lin Xiao asked Su Jiang to let him go as well, but Su Jiang ignored him and ran straight to the man. However, Su Jiang was easily beaten by the man with his chain. Su Jiang was sent flying towards Lin Xiao. After capturing Su Jiang, Lin Xiao was excited as this was his chance to shine as a hero. Immediately afterward, the system gave 3 choices. The first choice, take Su Jiang with him, and then run away from this incident. The second option, kneel and beg the demon Ling Qi to let go of the others. The third option, kill the demon Ling Qi and save everyone. Of course, Lin Xiao chose the third option. With confidence, Lin Xiao told them to leave all of this to him and jumped at Ling Che. They estimated that Ling Che was a B-rank ghost beast, so they weren't sure if Lin Xiao could beat him. With his fists, Lin Xiao tried to beat Ling Che, but as everyone expected, Ling Che easily beat Lin Xiao with his chain, making everyone dumbfounded by Lin Xiao's stupidity and wondering what he was doing. As he was being blown away, Lin Xiao could see Hong Ye in front of him. Hong Ye, who realized the problem, told him that Lin Xiao needed to focus and gather the spiritual power in his body and directed it into his right arm. After understanding what he had to do, Lin Xiao felt fortunate that Hong Ye was here. Lin Xiao was too close to Lin Xiao, so Lin Xiao misunderstood and tried to kiss Hong Ye. But Hong Ye scolded him and changed his face to his monster form, then told Lin Xiao to hurry up and fight. Lin Xiao was very surprised that Hong Ye could change his face so quickly. Before long, Lin Xiao finally came to his senses. The other students shouted for Lin Xiao and told him to let them go. Lin Xiao stood up again and intended to be serious. But the other students didn't believe him at all. Ling Che became interested and attacked Lin Xiao with his chain. Su Jiang was worried about Lin Xiao and Yang Yi was sure that Lin Xiao would die this time. But Lin Xiao was able to catch the chain easily. Ling Che was shocked by the aftermath. Lin Xiao then pulled on the chain. He intended to end all of this and swing Ling Che against a rock. Those who were watching wondered why Lin Xiao suddenly became strong. Ling Che got back to his feet and became even more excited, because Lin Xiao could hurt him. He also got on his motorcycle and was about to crash into Lin Xiao. Lin Xiao barely managed to avoid the motorbike. Ling Che then threw the chain, but Su Jiang was able to overcome the chain. Yang Yi was getting irritated with Su Jiang, but he suddenly felt something behind him. Lin Xiao actually got on his motorbike and hugged him. Using the opportunity, Su Jiang slashed at Ling Che's motorbike and attacked him. As his body's spiritual power was nearly depleted, Ling Chi, who felt cornered rather than fight to the death, he chose to die with them. Realizing what Ling Che was trying to do, Su Jiang pushed Lin Xiao to save him. Lin Xiao became worried about Su Jiang. Witnessing the huge explosion that occurred, the other students were worried because Lin Xiao and Su Jiang were still inside. A moment later, from within the smoke that was caused by the explosion, Lin Xiao walked out while carrying Su Jiang in his arms. Because Su Jiang's chest hurt, Lin Xiao volunteered to massage it. Of course, Su Jiang refused and called Lin Xiao a pervert. Not long after, the female students started to surround Lin Xiao and praise him for being so strong. Yang Yi didn't understand where Lin Xiao got all that power from. Amidst all this, the system notified that Lin Xiao had obtained a fragment of supernatural power as a task reward. Lin Xiao was happy because he could slowly unlock the power of his supernatural ability. But he thinks that he should stay humble because he wants to be a cool guy in the future. Immediately after that, the other disciples noticed something flying towards them. A drone announced that this was the end of the second-level practice exam. The others thought that the attack had been premeditated. The drone then informs that the second-level test is actually a practice exam with unexpected events, and their performance has all been recorded by a nearby camera. In this way, the students who showed their best abilities would become students of Changlan Academy. Su Jiang becomes angry with them because no one told him beforehand, even though he is their tester. They also reasoned that the academy was doing this for the sake of the authenticity of the exam. The drone then announced that the best candidate for this exam was Lin Xiao. Lin Xiao immediately acted arrogant because of it. The other students picked up Lin Xiao and threw him in the air to celebrate. Su Jiang, who witnessed this, thought that Lin Xiao had extraordinary potential hidden within his body. With Lin Xiao, Su Jiang believed that the future of Changlan Academy would undergo great changes. Lin Xiao finally returned home. Lin Shi greeted him and asked if Lin Xiao had passed the test. While stroking his younger brother's head, Lin Xiao told him that he had successfully passed his exam. Lin Shi was happy about it, but she felt a little sad that Lin Xiao had to leave home and stay at school. Believing that her brother was tired, Lin Shi told Lin Xiao to rest while she prepared dinner, and reminded Lin Xiao to tell Lin Hua about this good news. Lin Xiao also thanked Lin Shi. As soon as he arrived at his room, Lin Xiao immediately contacted Lin Hua and told him that he had passed his exam. Lin Hua also praised him, but since he had things to finish, Lin Hua said that he should go first. Lin Xiao then lay down on his bed. He thought that Lin Hua was really mysterious, and he didn't know when he would be able to meet him in person. Soon, Lin Xiao felt that his head was very heavy and thought that Hong Ye had come again. And sure enough, Hong Ye arrived and asked if Lin Xiao had missed him. Hong Ye then said that he needed Lin Xiao. He could teach Lin Xiao to improve his strength, but he asked Lin Xiao to promise her one thing. When asked Lin Xiao what it was, with a seductive face, Hong Ye asked Lin Xiao to marry him in the underworld. Hong Ye asked Lin Xiao to marry him. He told her that he and Lin Xiao were going to sign a soul contract for the marriage of the underworld. But Lin Xiao didn't understand because he was a human, so he didn't know how he could marry Hong Ye. But Hong Ye didn't care at all and said that he couldn't wait anymore. He then directly performed Lin Xiao's blood contract. Lin Xiao also screamed in pain. A moment later, the binding with blood as the medium was completed. Lin Xiao felt that his head hurt. 10 years ago, the devil god descended into the world and the blood was taken from the same person. Mi Qi was defeated, and 10 years later, he was reborn in the world. Lin Xiao, who witnessed this, thought that it must be the memory of Hong Ye's previous life. Morning finally arrived, and Lin Xi tried to wake Lin Xiao up to quickly have breakfast. He was a little worried because Lin Xiao wasn't sleeping very well yesterday, so he didn't have the heart to wake Lin Xiao up. Lin Xiao finally woke up, but he was curious as to why Hong Ye had disappeared again and wondered if shouldn't newlyweds have a bridal shower. Besides that, he was also curious about what happened to Hong Ye before. He decided if in the future he had the chance, he would ask her. Then he remembered that today was the day he went to Changlan Academy and parted ways with Lin Xi. When Lin Xiao was about to get on the bus to go to the academy, a sad Lin Xi said that she didn't want her brother to leave. Lin Xiao also assured Hong Ye that this didn't mean he wouldn't come back, so while on the trip later, he promised to contact Lin Xi. Lin Xiao was surprised that Lin Xi suddenly became so spoiled. Unfortunately, he didn't know the conditions at Changlan Academy, so he still couldn't bring Lin Xi along. While stroking Lin Xi's head, Lin Xiao assured Lin Xi not to worry because he would come back to see her. Because it was too late, the bus driver told Lin Xiao to quickly get on the bus. Seeing her sister waving her hand while going to board the bus, Lin Xi also waved her hand. Hong Ye thought that Lin Xiao didn't need to visit him because he would go see him on his own. At Changlan Academy, Lin Xiao was impressed because this academy looked luxurious. And most importantly, in this place, there are a lot of beautiful women. However, he thought that beauty could be seen again later. His top priority right now was to report to reception. He was so curious about who would be his teacher. In the academy's entrance hall, someone slammed the table and said that he didn't care, and he would get the best recruit. The other teacher who heard that became angry and asked what made him so confident. They then asked the female teacher if she thought she could do anything with her big breasts. The female teacher argued back and said that anyone with breasts could say whatever he wanted. Not far from them, people noticed Lin Xiao's existence. Lin Xiao acted cool and asked if they needed anything. The teachers became excited and intended to get Lin Xiao. They all coaxed Lin Xiao with pills, good teaching, or told him that the class had lots of female trainers. Lin Xiao was in trouble because they fought each other and forced Lin Xiao. Not only that, there are even teachers who try to sabotage each other to the point of making them fight. Lin Xiao, who witnessed this, thought that this academy was strict. A moment later, someone approached and called him. He introduced himself as Tang Ling's teacher and offered Lin Xiao to come to his class. The other teachers who noticed Tang Ling told Lin Xiao to stay away from Tang Ling. But Tang Ling told Lin Xiao not to listen to those who were just a bunch of old cockroaches. Seeing Lin Xiao, who was completely enchanted by him, Tang Ling showed his cleavage and said as long as Lin Xiao considered him as a teacher, then he would let Lin Xiao sleep in the best dormitory, and later he would give Lin Xiao a special advantage. They began to have nosebleeds watching it. But those tutors still didn't want to lose and told Tang Ling to stop talking nonsense. Yet Lin Xiao had already bowed his head and begged Tang Ling to become his disciple. Tang Ling then kissed Lin Xiao's forehead and told Lin Xiao not to disappoint him. Because if Lin Xiao embarrassed him, Tang Ling threatened he would drain his entire life. Lin Xiao, who witnessed Tang Ling's fearsome side, trembled in fear. Seeing that Lin Xiao had gotten a teacher, Lin Xiao was annoyed. Lin Xiao finally arrived at his dormitory. The environment in that place was really good. He couldn't believe it if you use a separate dorm here. Looking at the lawns and grass here, Lin Xiao thought that it would be really nice if there were beauties here. As he was relaxing, suddenly someone waved his hand and called out to Lin Xiao. He introduces himself as Xiang Qian and informs that he is the senior who will be in charge of teaching him. Lin Xiao came to Xiang Qian's courtyard to shake his hand and beg for guidance from him. But Xiang Qian laughed and said that Lin Xiao didn't need to be so formal and offered to call him fat instead. Xiang Qian then put his arm around Lin Xiao's shoulder and asked if Tang Lin's mentor had always been vicious. He also replied that it was very ferocious, like a weapon that killed the earth. He then asked if he was also promised special benefits in the future. Lin Xiao answered yes and asked if something was wrong. Xiang Qian's face immediately looked irritated. He told him that he was also tricked in this way, so he felt a responsibility to tell Tang Lin that he had fooled him. Lin Xiao still didn't understand what he meant, and thought that Tang Lin might have some kind of conspiracy. Xiang Qian then says that she won't lie to him, and tells Tang Lin's mentor that the other name is the Witch. He didn't want to say more, but Xiang Qian told him the special benefits that Tang Lin promised were really scary. There is such a big chance Lin Xiao won't even get it. Because of that, Xiang Qian warned to be careful not to be toyed with by Tang Lin. Lin Xiao was also surprised to hear that. But in his heart, Lin Xiao was actually looking forward to it after listening to Xiang Qian's words. Lin Xiao confidently convinced Xiang Qian not to worry. Xiang Qian finally left and told Lin Xiao to take care of herself. Elsewhere, Yang Yi reported to his grandfather about Lin Xiao that Tang Lin had received today. He told that Lin Xiao had always been against him, and also made him look ridiculous. Because of that, he asked his grandfather to help him. His grandfather also told Yang Yi not to worry, and promised Yang Yi that he would help him take care of Lin Xiao. At this time, Lin Xiao was relaxing in the bathtub. He didn't think every dorm had a special bathroom. But suddenly someone tapped Lin Xiao on the shoulder from behind. Lin Xiao was surprised when he saw Hong Ye, who was suddenly behind him, and asked why he always sneaked out. Hong Ye also told that he actually lived in Lin Xiao's spiritual world. As Lin Xiao looked confused, Hong Ye explained the spiritual world was a soul-created space, which had a combat aura called spiritual power. And he also told that Lin Xiao's spiritual world is really vast and hides a lot of spiritual power. But it was a pity that Lin Xiao's average strength was too weak to make full use of it. Lin Xiao also realized that Hong Ye signed a marriage contract with him, and stayed in his spiritual world was for his spiritual power. Hong Ye stroked Lin Xiao's chin, and replied that it was true. His spiritual world was corrupted, and he couldn't store much spiritual power in the form of a soul by himself. So after many battles, he needed to replace his spiritual power, and Lin Xiao was his best choice. Hearing that, Lin Xiao also invited Hong Ye to do the bridal shower, and he would channel his spiritual power to Hong Ye. But suddenly, someone knocked on his door. Lin Xiao got annoyed and opened the door, but he saw no one and thought that someone was playing a prank on him. Suddenly, from the tree, something jumped and passed Lin Xiao into the house. While chasing the intruder, Lin Xiao also found a yellow-skinned ferret. The yellow weasel didn't expect Lin Xiao to be able to dodge its attack. Besides, he also asked Lin Xiao if he looked like a human or a fairy. Lin Xiao thought that he might be a legendary fox asking for a seal. But this yellow weasel in front of him had already become a soul, so he wondered how he could find someone for a seal. Thinking that Lin Xiao was caught up in his questions, the yellow weasel pounced on Lin Xiao. But he was stopped by Hong Ye's scissors. Lin Xiao was getting annoyed that the yellow weasel was playing a foul game. Hong Ye was then about to kill the yellow weasel, but Lin Xiao called her Miss and stopped him. Hong Ye was so happy because she had been called by Miss, and asked what was the matter. With a devilish face, Lin Xiao said that they should seal him as food. Hearing that, even the yellow weasel was taken aback. After the yellow weasel was tied up like a masochist, they asked whether this yellow weasel could be eaten. The yellow weasel shouted at them for trying to eat a fox as cute as him. Hearing the yellow weasel call itself cute, they felt sick to their stomach. Using his crook-like face, Lin Xiao threatened if he doesn't want to become food, then tell him why he attacked him. The yellow weasel refused to tell and would rather die than surrender. Lin Xiao also asked Hong Ye to cook roasted yellow weasel. Hearing that, the yellow weasel immediately panicked and told Yang Guang it was Yang Guang who had sent him to attack Lin Xiao. Hearing Yang Guang's name, Lin Xiao recognized him as the grandfather of Yang Yi, the senior elder of Changlan Academy. Since they intended to kill him, he thought that in the future he should be more careful. A moment later, 3 options appear as tasks from the system. First choice, free the yellow skin and tell the little beast the way out. The second option, kill the yellow skin, then give it to the opponent. And the third option, disguise yourself as a chef and cook yellow skin. Seeing the choices of these options, Lin Xiao thought that the reward for choice 1 was the best. But if he let the yellow weasel go, it would have consequences as well. However, he got an idea and thought that he might be able to do that. He also said that he was generous and started releasing the yellow weasel. He then told the yellow weasel to leave right now. Soon, the system notified that Lin Xiao had completed the mission and obtained a marrow cleansing pill as a reward, which had been stored in the system storage. Lin Xiao was satisfied and thought that he didn't need to be so kind anymore. The yellow weasel was currently feeling moved because he would soon be out of this devil's cave. But Lin Xiao suddenly asked where the yellow mongoose had gone behind him. The yellow weasel trembled in fear as he realized that Lin Xiao had not kept his promise. With an innocent-looking face, Lin Xiao said that he did say he would release the yellow weasel, but it made sense for him to bring him back. From outside the dormitory building, the yellow weasel's loud screams could be heard. The yellow weasel finally fainted from fright. Seeing the yellow weasel, Hong Ye asked whether Lin Xiao intended to eat it. But it seemed that Lin Xiao had other ideas. The next day, the yellow weasel woke up with a dog collar around his neck. He was shocked because he did not believe he would be treated like a dog. Feeling deep suffering, the yellow weasel could only cry and scream for help to someone. In the morning, Lin Xiao woke up from his deep sleep. Last night, after taking the marrow cleansing pill, his entire body had a fever and was in a coma. He thought that Hong Ye seemed to be hugging and guarding him all night. He also thought that having a wife was not a bad thing. And not to mention, he has the right to touch his wife. However, Hong Ye woke up from his sleep. Lin Xiao immediately withdrew his hand and asked what was the matter. Seeing Lin Xiao, Hong Ye also noticed that Lin Xiao had gotten stronger and complimented that he was now more handsome. Hearing the praise, Lin Xiao immediately felt happy and started posing in front of the mirror. But even though Hong Ye didn't know where Lin Xiao got the pill that Lin Xiao used last night, he warned Lin Xiao not to get excited just yet. He was told that the energy level of the marrow cleansing pill that Lin Xiao had eaten was extremely high, but with Lin Xiao's current physical condition, he would not be able to completely absorb it. Hong Ye could help withstand the medicinal power so that Lin Xiao would not suffer too much. In order to completely absorb the energy from the marrow cleansing pill, Lin Xiao had to hone his muscles and bones. Hearing Hong Ye's explanation, Lin Xiao also suggested double training to gain strength together. However, Hong Ye turned his head and asked what he was to Lin Xiao in his eyes. Lin Xiao replied that Hong Ye was his milk tea and said that he wanted to hug Hong Ye in his heart every day. There was no other choice. Hong Ye told how to quickly strengthen the muscles and bones, actually, by still using external force to hit the body. In short, beaten. The opening ceremony is almost starting, and seen the new students who gathered in the field. At that time, Lin Xiao wondered if he could rely on Hong Ye's methods of getting beaten up. Not far away, Xiang Tian greeted Lin Xiao and asked why she looked so unhappy. Lin Xiao replied that he was not unhappy. He was just a little annoyed that he was too handsome. As Lin Xiao was walking, the other students stared at Lin Xiao and praised how handsome he was. One of them even offered milk for him. Lin Xiao also thanked him and refused because he had already eaten. In his heart, he felt very happy because he had many fans. But he thought that he had to keep rising to become a god they couldn't reach. He then came over to Tang Lin and greeted him. Tang Lin also introduced Lin Xiao to Lin Xiao's seniors in class, Murong Qingyue and Hao Feng. And besides that, there was also Su Jiang, who was previously an examiner in the new student exam. Su Jiang scolded Lin Xiao for being late on his first day at school. Seeing Hong Ye, Lin Xiao also said that it had only been a few days, but Su Jiang's body had become more toned. Su Jiang got annoyed and tried to beat up Lin Xiao, but Lin Xiao was able to dodge Su Jiang's attack easily. Su Jiang became very irritated because none of his attacks hit. Murong Qingyue also told Su Jiang to calm down and said there was a way to get rid of cheap people. Lin Xiao, who was constantly dodging, suddenly bumped into someone's chest. The Tang Lin, who he had just bumped into, praised Lin Xiao because he seemed to have improved. Moreover, Tang Lin had checked Lin Xiao's information, but he didn't think that Lin Xiao's father was Lin Yuan. Hearing that name, Xiang Tian was shocked because Lin Xiao was the son of his idol. They all knew that Lin Yuan was once the strongest spirit medium in Changlan City. They didn't expect Lin Xiao to actually come from a family of powerful people. But Lin Xiao himself didn't think that many people knew his adopted father. On the contrary, he as his son only had some vague memories of him. Chu Junyao, who was watching Lin Xiao, realized that Lin Xiao was stronger than before. He was curious about what Tang Lin, a magical girl from class 7, had done to make Lin Xiao improve so fast. On the other hand, young Yi was very annoyed that his grandfather had already sent the yellow skin soul, and it still hadn't returned. But Lin Xiao looked fine. It wasn't long before someone silenced everyone over the loudspeaker. He greeted all the new students and introduced himself as the vice president of Changlan Academy, Xuanyang. He started his speech and said that he believed they all came to be strong, so in the future, Changlan Academy would witness their rise. And now, he would invite some of the best new disciples to come on stage and receive the Changlan Order. When asked by Lin Xiao what the Changlan Order was, Xiangtian replied that it was a gift given by the academy to the best students. This is a student card for all activities within the academy. It is also a tool room for storing things, which is very useful. He then showed his Changlan Order. Lin Xiao didn't even expect that Xiangtian was the fat guy who was once the best freshman, and said that one shouldn't judge a book by its cover. Hearing Lin Xiao's words, an offended Xiangtian asked if Lin Xiao had no manners. Lin Xiao dodged it and said it was a compliment. Not long after, Chu Junyao was called the top freshman of the first class. Hearing Chu Junyao's speech, Lin Xiao thought that he was indeed a master of speech. For the best student of class 2, Yang Yi was the one chosen. Lin Xiao didn't expect Yang Yi to be selected as the best student because his performance in the second test was so low. He thought that this was very suspicious. Then, Lin Xiao was finally called the best student in class 7. The system also gave 3 choices. Option 1, speak normally and modestly to get appreciation. Option 2, talk smug and let the whole academy know who's boss. And choice 3, positive energy speech and touch everyone with true feelings. Seeing that there was a charisma bonus as a reward, Lin Xiao thought that it was what made one more popular. He thought he was a humble person, so he should have chosen the first option. But this time he wanted to be a bright star and get a good shot. So he chose option 3. While showing the Changlan Order he received, he said that he was honored to receive this award. But he didn't feel he deserved it. Chu Junyao, who knew Lin Xiao, was confused about what he was talking about at this time. Lin Xiao then said that he was just a stinking worthless person with low strength. But even so, the academy gave this award, and he felt that this was the majesty of Changlan Academy. So he thanked those who had accepted him, the academy, and all of them. Hearing Lin Xiao's speech made Chu Junyao wonder if he had misunderstood Lin Xiao and irritated Yang Yi because Lin Xiao stole the spotlight. However, after the system rewarded him with 5 charisma points for his work, Lin Xiao started to smile and said that all the speeches just now were lies. He then insulted everyone here as trash. Everyone who witnessed this was also dumbfounded. Lin Xiao kept on heating up all of them to beat him up. He thought that this way he could hone his muscles and bones. As today's ceremony had already ended, Xuanyang chased Lin Xiao away and asked the others to leave quietly. But Lin Xiao begged them all to beat him up together. The other students started to surround Lin Xiao and were about to beat up Lin Xiao, but Xiangtian and Hu Feng stopped them and begged them to forgive Lin Xiao for today. At the 2 of them stopping their aim, Lin Xiao called them useless fat and empty heads and told them to go home to take care of the pigs. They became very angry and started beating Lin Xiao along with the others. Yang Yi thought that he didn't need to beat up Lin Xiao at this time. Tang Lin, who witnessed this, thought that Lin Xiao was really crazy and was sure that he must be doing this for a reason. Lin Xiao was currently provoking people to beat him up. Hong Ye, who witnessed this, asked why they didn't just go home and continue again tomorrow. But Lin Xiao persisted and acted even more stupid. Passers-by really wanted to punch him, but they were sure that Lin Xiao was really crazy. Lin Xiao felt disappointed because lately, it wasn't easy to get beaten up. One of the passers-by who heard Lin Xiao suggested trying to date one of the 4 most popular girls in school, Mo Ching Chung, if he was so brave. Hearing that made Lin Xiao excited again. Since she was the most popular girl, he was sure she would have a lot of male fans. So if he dated her, they would beat him up for sure. Hong Ye was stunned to hear of Lin Xiao's plan. First, Lin Xiao planned to stir up the campus group chat. Hong Ye also restrained himself, because Lin Xiao was only acting. It didn't take long for Lin Xiao to find people who were provoked. Many people messaged him and insulted him. Soon, a mob of people was seen running towards Lin Xiao. They really couldn't wait to kill Lin Xiao with his friends. Lin Xiao was very surprised to see the number of people running towards him. Hong Ye, who felt danger, said that he would rather stay in the spirit world. Elsewhere, a girl was looking at her cell phone and was intent on tagging Lin Xiao, because this was the first time anyone dared to show their feelings directly to him. After being beaten by many people, the battered Lin Xiao thought that he had gone too far, but they didn't expect that Lin Xiao would still be able to hold on and was about to teach him more lessons. But Tang Lin came and blocked them. He was very angry because they all had the heart to bully his students. He then shouted at them and told them to disperse within 3 seconds. After they all left, Tang Lin also asked if Lin Xiao wanted to strengthen his body by seeking a fight. But Lin Xiao dodged and asked Tang Lin what was wrong with him. While blowing out the smoke, Tang Lin told him that he had come to tell Lin Xiao that the day after tomorrow the campus would open a spiritual spring. Lin Xiao didn't really know what Hong Ye meant. Tang Lin then narrated that when the world's spiritual energy had recovered, many miracles appeared on Earth. One of them is a spiritual spring capable of increasing strength. So he advised Lin Xiao to increase his strength in the next 2 days, since the other disciples would also be competing for resources. Besides, this spring was open for a limited time, and giving this opportunity to Lin Xiao was not easy. So Tang Lin had him thank him. Lin Xiao also thanked Tang Lin and called her the most beautiful woman in the world. Hearing the praise, Tang Lin told Lin Xiao to follow him because he would keep his promise and give Lin Xiao something special. Lin Xiao was instantly tempted hearing the word special from Tang Lin. He thought that Xiang Qian must be just scaring him. In the afternoon behind the campus, a large rock rolled down quickly. Lin Xiao, who was being chased by the rock, loudly asked if this was something special. Tang Lin, who was relaxing while drinking, encouraged Lin Xiao, because if he didn't hurry, he would die. After that, Lin Xiao had to do push-ups with Tang Lin on his back. Lin Xiao wondered whether this was luck for him or suffering. Not far from them, Xiang Qian and Hu Feng were laughing at Lin Xiao. Later practice, Lin Xiao had to sit under a waterfall while being whipped by Tang Lin. After that, Lin Xiao was told to jump off the cliff onto the trampoline. Lin Xiao thought that Tang Lin wanted to make Lin Xiao say goodbye to the world once and for all. He really felt like quitting. Evening finally arrived. Because Tang Lin did not allow Lin Xiao to eat and rest all day, Lin Xiao asked if he was a devil. Hearing the complaints, Tang Lin gave Lin Xiao a few minutes to rest. Tang Lin then said that he wanted to talk about Lin Xiao's father, Lin Yuan. He was sure that even though Lin Xiao was his son, he did not know much about his father's past. Lin Xiao replied that his father rarely told him anything and heard more about him from other people. Hearing Lin Xiao's answer, Tang Lin began to tell how great Lin Xiao's father was. 10 years ago, a horde of monsters attacked the city of Changlan. Those monsters killed many people and occupied the territory of the region. Society is in unknown danger. Lin Xiao's father, Lin Yuan, steps up to lead his own team of edge hunters to protect the city of Changlan. As a member of the edge hunter team, Tang Lin fought alongside him. They protect the people and kill the monsters with their lives. They manage to save everyone. However, their number is very large. There were even S-rank enemies. After a fierce resistance, they finally managed to defeat them. But Lin Yuan and the rest of the team were seriously injured and died. Lin Xiao didn't expect his father to die saving others. Even though he is only a soul passer, he is still proud to have such a father. He came to this world and has lived quietly for some time, but he had almost forgotten that they didn't live in a peaceful society. But they're only born in a peaceful environment. This serenity was the result of the sweat and blood of his father and his predecessors. Her father dies, and her sisters continue their struggle after entering the psychic department. He saves the city and kills ghosts and monsters in secret. Fate allowed him to cross the world, so he feels indebted to himself. For the sake of those closest to him, for the sake of this world, Lin Xiao was determined to become stronger and do something useful. He wanted to protect this world. Thus, he asked Tang Lin to continue his training because he wanted to become strong. Hearing Lin Xiao's determination, Tang Lin ordered him to do another 1,000 push-ups. Somewhere, Yang Guang said that Lin Xiao should be removed. Mu He, an elite second-year batch student who received the assignment, said that he could kill an ordinary freshman in a few seconds. Yang Guang then ordered Mu He to pick up 1,000 spirit stones on the table to finish off Lin Xiao. Mu He also asked Yang Guang not to worry because he has a rank supernatural power. So he was sure he could finish Lin Xiao off. Without taking the 1,000 spirit stones, Mu He said that he would come back to get the 1,000 spirit stones. The next day, Lin Xiao bid farewell to Hong Ye and invited him to make out tonight. 2 days ago, with the help of his wife Hong Ye, plus Tang Lin's rigorous training, the marrow cleansing pill was almost completely absorbed. That way, the S-level body will be completed. He then saw the yellow weasel who looked lethargic. Lin Xiao approached him and asked if the bones were not good. The yellow weasel became angry at being treated as a dog, and said that even though he was very hungry, he would not eat anything that Lin Xiao gave him. Lin Xiao took out the chicken thigh meat and asked how about it, but the yellow weasel still refused. But even though the yellow weasel refused him, his hands and mouth acted differently. Just as Lin Xiao was about to leave, the yellow weasel warned Lin Xiao to be alert, because he didn't come back. With Yang Guang's disposition, the yellow weasel was certain he would definitely not let this happen, and sent more people to kill him. Lin Xiao also took the warning and called him the Orange, making the yellow weasel irritated. The disciples have now arrived at their today's training ground, the spiritual spring. Lin Xiao didn't expect that there would be a building so close to nature. Tang Lin told everyone that they had 500 spiritual stones stored in their respective Changlan order, and all of them were given free by the college to activate the spring, so he warned them to take good care of him. He then explained that after entering the spiritual spring, throw a spiritual stone into the spring to expel the spiritual energy within. When asked by Lin Xiao what a spiritual stone is, Xiangqian answered that a spiritual stone is a natural stone that contains spiritual energy, which can be used to recover energy, or as currency. The spring door was finally opened. The students rushed to take their places. Suzhang invites the others to enter. With a bit of teasing, Tang Lin told Lin Xiao to come back early because he would be waiting for him. The stunned Lin Xiao convinced Tang Lin that he would definitely come back. When he went inside, Lin Xiao felt impressed because the scenery was so beautiful. Seeing beautiful girls passing by, Xiangqian goes to help them find a spring. Lin Xiao was getting irritated because Xiangqian didn't even tell him which spring was the best. Moreover, he realized that Yang Yi was also here. But since it was not important at the moment, Lin Xiao decided to return to the main topic and tried to search using his instincts. After discovering an extremely large and thick door, Lin Xiao thought that behind this door was a rare spiritual spring. He smiled evilly and kicked the door open. But in this place, there are already 2 women who are bathing in the spring. Witnessing the scene before him, Lin Xiao could only enjoy it and gave a thumbs up. One of the girls noticed that the one who had just barged in was Lin Xiao. Upon hearing that name, Mo Qingcheng was sure that she was the one who had written him that message. Lin Xiao didn't expect that he would meet the campus maiden Mo Qingcheng. Soon the system gives 3 choices. Option 1, immediately run away, run away. Option 2, jump straight into the pool. And Option 3, apologize to both of them. Since it had come to this point, Lin Xiao thought it was useless to explain. So he chose the second option and jumped into the pool of spring water. Lin Xiao was beaten up and knocked out of the room and got 6 psychic fragments as a reward from the system. Witnessing the incident, Mu He was sure that Lin Xiao was thrown out of Mo Qingcheng's cave and wondered if he had just seen Mo Qingcheng taking a bath. Due to his overflowing jealousy, Mu He vowed to kill Lin Xiao. After a while of searching, Lin Xiao finally found a small spring despite being beaten up. He thought he had at least seen something beautiful, so it was all worth it. After dipping himself into the spring water, he felt that its aura was very calming. Soon, he saw Hong Ye appear in front of him. Hong Ye also asked whether he was enough for Lin Xiao and why he was still looking for other women. Lin Xiao stuttered and couldn't answer. Hong Ye was annoyed and bit Lin Xiao's shoulder. He didn't expect that Hong Ye would be that jealous. Suddenly, the cave wall behind Lin Xiao was smashed in by someone. Mu He was furious that Lin Xiao had tarnished Mo Qingcheng. Lin Xiao realized that it was the person who had spoken to Yang Yi just now. With his claws, Mu He lunged to attack Lin Xiao. Lin Xiao was able to dodge the attack, but Mu He's attack caused the floor beneath them to collapse. Lin Xiao was surprised to find that this spiritual spring pool is empty underneath. Lin Xiao managed to reach the floor, but Mu He pulled on Lin Xiao's leg to take Lin Xiao with him. They both fell into the big hole. Worried about Lin Xiao, Hong Ye went after him. Mu He, who was feeling very satisfied, laughed heartily at the thought of successfully completing his mission. After falling, Mu He finally plunged into the water. Realizing that there was water below him, Lin Xiao prepared to dive in, but he was surprised when he found there was land behind the water. Hong Ye also caught Lin Xiao, who was about to fall. However, Mu He, who had no one, could only scream for help and hit the ground with his body. Lin Xiao was truly grateful that his wife was here with him. Seeing this place, Hong Ye didn't expect that there was a small world under this spring. Lin Xiao thought that there might be treasure buried here, so he invited Hong Ye to come down and have a look. Hong Ye also said that he would follow his request. Lin Xiao panicked because he would fall if he let go. After landing, Lin Xiao came over to Mu He. He then checked Mu He's breath and was sure that he was dead. Hong Ye also asked how Lin Xiao felt now. He replied that he did not feel anything. He failed to hurt others to the point of hurting himself, so he thought that he deserved to die. He then said the only thing he could do was take all of his belongings and let him leave this world without any strings attached. Without thinking, Lin Xiao checked the things that He brought and found some spirit stones. Soon Hong Ye said that he felt the aura of anger here was very strong, and it seemed that there were ghosts and monsters gathering in large numbers around this area. Hearing that, Lin Xiao also asked if they were as beautiful as Hong Ye, because if he is, that's a good thing for him. Hong Ye also scolded him, who had thoughts everywhere, and told him clearly this was a ghost town. The people living here are definitely evil spirits. Because he was pinched by Hong Ye apologized and promised never to have another beautiful girl. To change the subject, Lin Xiao asked, what was the ghost town that Hong Ye had just said? Hong Ye explained the ghost town is a vicious and fatal place occupied by ghosts and monsters, which is a very dangerous place for the weak. Hearing Hong Ye's explanation, Lin Xiao thought that what Hong Ye meant by weaklings was probably him. Suddenly, they heard a voice from near them. Then, a ball bounced towards them. A ball that looked like a pokeball rolled towards Lin Xiao's feet. Lin Xiao became curious as to where this ball had come from. Suddenly, two ghosts came to him, and they asked Lin Xiao to teach them how to play ball if they don't want to kill them. Lin Xiao was very surprised because the two ghosts appeared suddenly. But a moment later, the system gives 3 choices. Kick the ball back and play well with them, find a way to kill them and go quietly, and provoke the ghosts to get angry and fight them head on. Since they wanted to play ball, Lin Xiao thought that he would play well with them. He also accepted their invitation to play together. Lin Xiao then took the ball and kicked it so hard that it hit one of the ghosts. Hong Ye also cheered on Lin Xiao and praised his good kick. The only ghost who witnessed it started to cry. Someone got into the ghost town and killed his friend. Lin Xiao was delighted when he saw that the system was giving out rewards from his work. Because the ghost called for help, Hong Ye took Lin Xiao to escape. But Lin Xiao refused, because this was what he wanted. Since he was just a little away from absorbing the full power of the marrow-cleansing pill, he thought it would be good for him to be wiped out here. The ghost's help had finally arrived. They were very angry because someone was bullying their sister. With his strange pose, Lin Xiao ordered them to beat him up. The ghosts thought that Lin Xiao must be crazy. But because Lin Xiao had killed their younger brother, he invited the others to kill Lin Xiao and eat his meat together. They all ended up running towards Lin Xiao and started beating Lin Xiao. Seeing Hong Ye, they wondered if he had come with Lin Xiao. But because Hong Ye just kept silent, they thought that Hong Ye just wanted to enjoy the show. While being beaten by Lin Xiao, his attitude was very relaxed and provoked them to continue beating him. Since beating Lin Xiao had no effect, they also asked Lin Xiao to eat him alive because they realized that Lin Xiao was a psychic. Lin Xiao panicked because of that. Hong Ye, who was watching, was worried that if this continued, then Lin Xiao would die, so he intends to help. However, soon a light appeared where Lin Xiao was. Lin Xiao Lao blow them away with her strength. Finally, the S-rank body has been resurrected. Lin Xiao also invited Hong Ye to fight and finish them all off. They then started running towards the ghosts. Hong Ye quickly slashed at the ghosts with his scissors. On the other hand, Lin Xiao was beating up the ghosts that were coming towards him. Hong Ye also congratulated Lin Xiao for successfully awakening his body to rank S. Lin Xiao was happy, because he was not in vain killing him earlier. He felt that the S-level body was very good. As he moved, he could feel all of his body's meridians burning like a blazing fire, like a phoenix being reborn. Hong Ye also felt happy because Lin Xiao had improved a lot. But suddenly they felt something. From behind Lin Xiao, suddenly a hand of smoke grabbed Lin Xiao's arm. Hong Ye also asked Lin Xiao to leave immediately, because he smelled a B-rank ghost monster, or above, most likely a ghost king. He then flew up to send Lin Xiao up first, then back to the spirit world. Upon returning to the surface, he saw Tang Lin and the others waiting for him. Noticing the existence of the ghost beast, Tang Lin pulled Lin Xiao and told him to step back. Then, Tang Lin told Xiang Qian to take Lin Xiao outside while he took care of this place. Lin Xiao wondered what kind of terrifying creature it was that made Tang Lin so serious. Lin Xiao and Hong Ye had returned to their homes. Lin Xiao was currently looking at the campus news on his cell about Tang Lin defeating the spring ghost. Apart from that, there was also news that told of Mu He's disappearance. Lin Xiao thought that the ghosts and monsters had eaten Mu He's body. A moment later, he got a message from Xiang Tian. He tells her that because the springs are temporarily closed, the academy has decided to compensate by giving out soul jades to every student who takes part in the activity, and Tang Lin orders them to retrieve them as soon as possible. Lin Xiao became curious about what soul jade was. Hong Ye also explained that the soul jade is the energy core in the bodies of ghosts and monsters, responsible for storing aura and has a texture similar to jade. That's why it's called soul jade. When ghosts or monsters died, they would drop different soul jades depending on their cultivation level. After ingesting the soul jade, the psychic can gain access to the aura stored within it, and sometimes gain some special abilities. Hearing that, Lin Xiao also teased Hong Ye and said that he wanted to feel where his jade hook was. Moreover, Lin Xiao was asking when they were going to have their wedding, but Hong Ye asked him to talk about it later. The yellow weasel felt very disturbed by the behavior of the two of them. Besides that, he was also annoyed because every heart Lin Xiao gave him dog food. Lin Xiao then asked Hong Ye to leave, but before he left, he gave the yellow weasel some chicken soup, much to his surprise, as Lin Xiao usually didn't do good without reason. Lin Xiao also said that the yellow weasel had warned him to be careful with Yang Yi and the others, otherwise he would be dead. Because of that, he was very grateful to her. Hearing that, the yellow weasel felt good and told Lin Xiao to do something for him. But Lin Xiao ignored him and went back to talking to Hong Ye, which annoyed the yellow ferret to be ignored. Still, the yellow weasel thought that Lin Xiao was very different. Yang Guang locked him up like cattle, not infrequently even whipping and forcing the yellow weasels to work for him. Although Lin Xiao's morals were a bit questionable, the yellow weasel thought that Lin Xiao was a good person. But he gets annoyed thinking that he likes the person who locked him up. In the chairman's office, Yang Guang is so annoyed that they failed again and look like idiots. Yang Yi also asked Yang Guang to send someone even stronger to kill Lin Xiao, but Yang Guang said that this could not be done in a hurry. So he asked Yang Yi to be patient because there would be a chance later. During the day, in the treasure house, this is the place to pick up soul jade, and Xiang Tian introduced the grandfather in front of them that he was the guardian of this treasure house. Everyone called him Grandpa Kang. Lin Xiao was about to laugh at his call, but Xiang Tian told Lin Xiao to keep his bearings. Grandfather Kang woke up and glanced at Lin Xiao. Lin Xiao was immediately shocked because he felt pressured, whereas Grandpa Kang just stared at him lazily, and Lin Xiao felt the hairs on his neck stand on their own. Grandpa Kang then stood up and started to guide them. Seeing Grandpa Kang, Lin Xiao thought that he had misjudged people. Xiang Tian told him that this is the soul jade storage stone box. The texture is very hard and also added with the sealing aura, very difficult to open with bare hands. Formerly, this object was used to test one's strength. He even told me that he had trouble trying to open it. Grandpa Kang then invited them to start and told them all to find a way to open the box and get the soul jade. Lin Xiao asked Xiang Qian if he knew the best way to do it. Xiang Qian says just force it open. They all tried to open the box by force. Upon opening the box he chose, Xiang Qian was disappointed that he got a bad soul jade. Lin Xiao was shocked because Xiang Qian had already opened it himself. He was so confused to choose which box. He feels like it's like a lottery. and it reminds him of his previous life. Soon the system presented Lin Xiao with a choice. Keep calm and open the box normally. Open the box by smashing it as hard as you can, or pretend to be a beginner and ask for help opening it. Seeing that choice, Lin Xiao thought that the system wanted Lin Xiao to open it violently. Lin Xiao got excited and intended to try out his new physical strength. With his fist, Lin Xiao smashed the box into pieces. The others were shocked to see it. Even Grandpa Kang scolded Lin Xiao for opening the box like this. But Lin Xiao said that Grandfather Kang told them to open the city without telling how to do it, so he immediately hit him with his bare hands. Lin Xiao then started to open other cities, making Grandpa Kang panic. The other students did not want to be left behind and wanted to forcefully open the box too. Even Hao Feng also asked his classmates to take one. Finally, Grandfather Kang stopped Lin Xiao and asked him to follow him. After being brought to a different room, Lin Xiao asked what he had brought her here for. But what else could Grandpa Kang do? Because Lin Xiao kept destroying his boxes, and the other students couldn't choose him later. He showed some of the rare soul jades he had collected. Because Lin Xiao was strong enough, he allowed Lin Xiao to take one. Lin Xiao was at a loss to choose because they all looked good. A moment later, he heard Hong Ye's voice calling him. Hong Ye showed a good-looking soul jade and told him that it was the Blazing Ghost soul jade. He explained that even though it was F level, it contained a very small but rare aura. This soul jade is also able to stimulate the potential so that the user can get the flame system from psychic abilities. Even though Lin Xiao's body had already reached S rank, his psychic ability was still not fully developed, and his aura was also lacking, so Hong Ye thought this was the best choice. Seeing that Lin Xiao took the soul jade, Grandpa Kang said that it was a good choice. As he expected, Grandpa Kang thought that Lin Xiao had unique eyesight. Soon the system notified that the soul jade had been detected and asked if Lin Xiao wanted to absorb its power. Lin Xiao was shocked that he didn't expect the system to be able to absorb soul jade. Since Hong Ye and Grandpa Kang agreed on this soul jade, he thought there was nothing to hesitate about and decided to absorb it. The absorption finally succeeded, and Psychic Chi got the fire attribute. Now the Inferno Fist skill has been unlocked. Lin Xiao was happy because Hong Ye was so thorough. It was thanks to him that he obtained treasures and acquired skills. Grandfather Kang was immediately stunned when he saw Lin Xiao absorbing the soul jade. With the strength of his fire attribute, Lin Xiao could feel his psychic power activating and about to be activated on his left hand. Grandfather Kang, who witnessed this, wondered what happened to Lin Xiao's psychic powers. Now Lin Xiao's psychic powers have evolved, and the system congratulates him on partially unlocking his Qi, left arm ability. Lin Xiao also felt so strong that he couldn't help it. Lin Xiao has now finally unlocked the ability on his left hand, even though Qi's ability is still not fully unlocked. He was determined to continue working hard. Grandfather Kang, who witnessed this, thought that Lin Xiao had a bright future. A moment later, Xiangqian came to tell Lin Xiao to run away because Mo Qingcheng's fans had banded together to catch Lin Xiao. Lin Xiao thought that this was the right time to try out his new power. But he was stopped by Xiangqian. He warned that they were led by Lu Feng and told him that he was known as the fighting maniac in this campus. Therefore, Xiangqian asked Lin Xiao to reconsider. But Lin Xiao didn't want to miss this opportunity because he had just gotten a new skill. Outside the building, many people called Lin Xiao to come out. One of them looks really intimidating. He was the Lu Feng we were just talking about. An annoyed Lu Feng shouted for Lin Xiao to come out. His friend thought that Lin Xiao must not dare to come out and had run away. But soon, Lin Xiao showed himself. With his annoying behavior, Lin Xiao asked which son wanted to find his father. Lu Feng, who is fed up with Lin Xiao, says that Lin Xiao must be crazy for confessing his love to the goddess Mo Qingcheng. But Lin Xiao didn't care about bullshit and ordered them to fight immediately. Hearing Lin Xiao's arrogant words made Lu Feng angry and used his grad ape form to attack Lin Xiao. With his fist, he hit Lin Xiao. Xiangqian, who witnessed this, was surprised because the attack was very fast. He couldn't even see his movements. He thought that Lin Xiao was in danger, but Lin Xiao was able to catch Lu Feng's fist with his hand. Lu Feng pulled his hand back. Lin Xiao then mocked Lu Feng for not being able to finish it in one fell swoop. Hearing that made Lu Feng even more irritated and called his friend over to bring his cannon. His friend also used his psychic ability, artillery summoning. He then asked Lu Feng to use himself. Lin Xiao and Xiang Qian, who were watching, were stunned and wondered if it was the Yun Long cannon or the Neo Armstrong Cyclone Jet Armstrong cannon. Lin Xiao also ran over to them to take care of them first. Seeing Lin Xiao running towards them, V4 shouted and told Lin Xiao to feel their anger. Lin Xiao then remembered to try his new skill. Using the psychic ability in his right hand, he activated the skill Inferno Fist. At that moment, Lu Feng fired his cannon. There was a big explosion. Even the disciples in the distance could feel it. When they arrived, they were shocked at the devastation it had caused. Lu Feng, who was defeated by Lin Xiao, did not understand how Lin Xiao could suddenly be this strong when he wanted to be beaten in the past. Moreover, Lu Feng noticed that Lin Xiao was deflecting his attack and thought that Lin Xiao wanted to forgive them for not killing him. But Lin Xiao actually just missed his attack. But he pretended and said that he was giving them a chance to warn Lu Feng not to be a sycophant, because he would get nothing in the end. Xiang Qian approached Lin Xiao and asked what soul jade Lin Xiao had absorbed and whether he had unlocked any powerful skills. Lin Xiao modestly replied that he had only absorbed an ordinary F-rank soul jade and he was still weak. Watching the fight, Grandpa Kang thought that Lin Xiao was indeed a good student. He was sure that Lin Xiao would become a talented person in the future. In front of Lin Xiao's dormitory, Lin Shi had finally arrived. He felt sad because his brother was busy lately. But he thought he was lucky because he found out where his campus was by asking Lin Hua and finally found Lin Xiao's home address. But once again he felt sad because he felt that Lin Xiao was not at home. He decided to wait inside and gave Lin Xiao a surprise. Wang Tai-sin, who was aware of Lin Shi's arrival, came and threatened Lin Shi to leave immediately if she didn't want to be hurt. But he felt something was wrong. He was so annoyed why he became the caretaker of this house. Lin Shi, who witnessed Wang Tai-sin's strange behavior, thought he was a dog and started to rub his head. Because he was called a dog, Wang Tai-sin became angry and threatened Hong Ye to beat him up. But a bear appeared behind Lin Shi and asked if she wanted to fight. Wang Tai-sin became very scared. Feeling its very strong aura, Wang Tai-sin was sure that this bear was the Demon King. To protect himself, Wang Tai-sin immediately acted like a dog. Lin Shi, who thought that Wang Tai-sin was very cute, started stroking his belly. In his heart, Wang Tai-sin hoped someone would help him. In fact, it has arrived. Lin Xiao, who finally arrived home, felt very tired. But he saw that the door of his house was open, making him think a thief had entered. But Hong Ye warned Lin Xiao because he felt a strong, vicious aura. At this time, Lin Shi, who was hiding behind the sofa, intended to make Lin Xiao surprised. Wang Tai-sin thought that Lin Xiao was now finished because there was a sinister demon king in this house. Lin Xiao found it strange that no one was inside. He also thought that he might have forgotten to close the door when he came out this morning. But Hong Ye suddenly warned Lin Xiao. When Lin Xiao looked back, Lin Shi suddenly hugged him. Lin Xiao hugged him and asked him what he was doing here. Lin Shi was cranky because her brother never came back to see her. That's why she came here. But Lin Xiao was currently busy as he wanted to work hard to become stronger in order to protect his sister later. Hong Ye was relieved that Lin Shi was his little sister. Wang Tai-sin was stunned when he found out that the Demon King was Lin Xiao's younger brother. Because Lin Xiao was busy, Lin Shi forgave Lin Xiao. Lin Xiao also thanked him for understanding. After all, Lin Xiao's ultimate goal was to join the Psychic Powers Department and fight together with their big brother in the future. Hong Ye then said that he had good news he wanted to talk about. He then showed a certificate and told me that it was a cooperation certificate. He asked his brother to help him and also the campus to handle it. And now Lin Shi can live here with Lin Xiao. Lin Xiao said that it was very good and he was very happy, but inside he was panicking because this could be the end of his beautiful life with Hong Ye. Even Wang Tai-sin also thought it would be difficult for him in the future. Therefore he intends to escape. But Wang Tai-sin, who was running away, was caught by Lin Shi. Lin Shi, who looked happy, said that Wang Tai-sin was really fun. For some reason, seeing Wang Tai-sin being toyed with made Lin Xiao feel happy. When Wang Tai-sin was choking hard because he was hugged by Lin Shi so hard, Lin Shi asked Lin Xiao if he really lived alone. The house looks very clean, and Lin Xiao lives alone, so Lin Shi felt suspicious. Lin Xiao was panicked because Lin Shi was like a detective. Lin Shi then started interrogating Lin Xiao whether he had any pretty girls and so on. Lin Xiao dodged it and said that he didn't have time with any girls. Hearing that, Lin Shi felt relieved. He said that Lin Xiao shouldn't get involved with other girls because they were terrible. Unlike him, they would only make Lin Xiao sad. Lin Xiao lowered his head as if he had received an order from his boss. Wang Tai-sin, who witnessed this, thought that Lin Shi was very scary and decided to try to stay away from her later. Lin Xiao was confused about what he should do with Hong Ye. On the other hand, Hong Ye thought that his younger sister Lin Xiao was very attractive, and he could not wait for their life together in the future. The next morning, Lin Shi cooked them breakfast. When the food was served, Lin Xiao, who saw the food, thought that Lin Shi might be taking revenge on him. Seeing her sister not eating her food, Lin Shi asked why Lin Xiao wasn't eating. Lin Xiao also asked if this could really be eaten. Hearing that question, Lin Shi convinced Lin Xiao that Wang Tai-sin even ate it until there was nothing left. Seeing Wang Tai-sin's condition, Lin Xiao immediately lost his appetite completely. After being asked by his sister to eat it while it was hot, Lin Xiao prepared himself to finish the food quickly. But he didn't expect it to taste really good. The food was so good that he felt like he was being teased by a mermaid. He also praised Lin Shi because the cooking was delicious. Seeing that, Wang Tai-sin thought, as he expected, eating this bad only the Demon King's older brother could enjoy it. In the end, Lin Xiao ate and drank enough. While there were no classes today, Lin Xiao decided to look for work. Originally, he only needed to feed his wife Hong Ye and Wang Tai-sin, and now he had to feed Lin Shi too. But now his wallet is empty. It was impossible for him to ask Lin Hua for money, because he was the head of the 4 members of the family. But he felt sad to be burdened with this kind of responsibility at his age. Xiang Qian, who noticed Lin Xiao's existence, came up to him and asked if Lin Xiao wanted to come out too. Lin Xiao replied that he wanted to work to make money because he had no classes in the next 2 days. Hearing that, Xiang Qian said that she was currently going to work part-time. Lin Xiao directly begged Xiang Qian to come with him. Xiang Qian agreed because they also happened to be short on people on their team. Lin Xiao got excited by it. They finally arrived at the mercenary hall. Lin Xiao didn't expect that the part-time job that Xiang Qian meant was to become a mercenary. Although Lin Xiao knew of the existence of the mercenary alliance, he still didn't quite understand it. But after he took a look, he didn't expect that there were so many people working as mercenaries. Xiang Qian also explained that each city has its own mercenary alliance. Then there is also such a thing as a gift alliance. In the middle of the mercenary hall there will be a mission board. There will be displayed daily missions sent by the monster department and other high lords. The prizes are different, but the value is still great. They finally arrived at the mission board. Xiang Qian told them that they had more time to go home from college, and following the mercenaries to earn money had been allowed by the campus in secret. There are even campuses that act as intermediaries for students to introduce things about mercenaries. In the middle of his explanation, Xiang Qian was surprised to see Lin Xiao, who didn't listen to what he said. Lin Xiao was overjoyed to see that his mission reward was so great. He laughs and thinks he will become a billionaire for sure. The people who saw Lin Xiao's behavior became very irritated and wondered if he had come here looking for trouble. Lin Xiao then began to fantasize and worry that he would become naughty and get drunk after becoming rich. He was sure Hong Ye would kill him. At the same time, since there was no news from Lin Xiao, Hong Ye was sure that Lin Xiao must be thinking bad thoughts. After a while, Lin Xiao was summoned by Xiang Qian to meet his team. Before meeting them, Xiang Qian warned whether or not Lin Xiao would join would depend on Lin Xiao's performance this time. He then pointed in the direction where they were. Seeing that crowd of people, Lin Xiao didn't expect that this team was popular enough to have fans. After making their way through the crowd, they arrived at the gathering place of his team, the Shogun Blade team. Xiang Qian then introduced Lin Xiao to the chairman and told him that Lin Xiao wanted to join his team. Hearing Lin Xiao's name, the blue-haired man felt that he had heard of it before. Lin Xiao also greeted them. Then, the leader of this team, Chu Ti, extended his fists for a handshake and introduced himself. Once upon a time in the kingdom of Ubera, by the power of the spirit of light, the sun was published. And by controlling the darkness, The spirit controller Freed brings the night. While Millionaire provides life energy, Freedy prepares to rest. Millionaire illuminates the world with a warm light. Meanwhile, Freed shaded it with a shady shadow. Such is the world, including the Ubera Empire formed by their hands. Today, the Millionaire imperial family and the special and charming Archduke Freed family are irreplaceable figures who can control spirits. In the royal palace of Ubera, in a huge royal building with its impressive architecture, the weather is sunny with lots of greenery. Everything is blooming. Everything is bright green. Inside the palace, the light passed through the window. There were many plants in the room. Everything is well maintained with greens and browns. A girl with light golden hair and bright blue eyes was sitting in the hall. She was wearing a blue uniform with a ribbon tied in her hair. He sat on a chair reading a book while thinking hard. That's not even funny. That girl's name is Dorothea. She is the princess of the Ubera kingdom. There was a boy who approached her and called her Dorothea, but she did not respond. So the boy kept calling her. She is irritated and finally tells him not to make a fuss. He called him Ray. After those words, he got up and went somewhere. The boy looked and did not understand where he was moving. He followed her around. He wanted to apologize. She asked him if he was too noisy. He asks her not to get angry as he will be quiet. Dorothea reflected on what was so annoying around her at the moment. He didn't even know how she could address him so pitifully. The boy's name is Raymond Millionaire. He is a boy who always smiles the same way. He has bright golden hair and bright blue eyes. He still follows her. He went around offering Dorothea to go with him. He is the prince of the kingdom of Ubera, and the obnoxious and stupid older brother of Dorothea. Dorothea looked at him with displeasure at his interruption. He was the legitimate crown prince who once died by his own hands. And this is his second life, a last chance for the former tyrant. He would not repeat the same regrets a second time. That is his current life goal. He wants to live well. The lesson from his first life is that good defeats evil. But there he is the evil one. In her past life, Dorothea was seen carrying a sword and bloodied clothes. She stood in front of Raymond, who was sprawled on the floor and covered in blood. She killed her own brother to get the throne. She killed the crown prince to usurp the title of emperor. Kill all who oppose it, and only share wealth with the power of those who are after his heart. But everything was destroyed after she had everything. The man she loved hated her and chose to die. The people she gave power turned to choke their own throats. People call her a tyrant. They burned her palace and called for her death. This life lesson was enough for her. And that's how he accepted her own death. Dorothea opened her eyes. She faintly heard a rhetorical question mentioning how she looked so beautiful. She didn't understand what they were talking about. Now she is called princess. She is Dorothea Millionaire, the tyrant reborn. Maybe it was a lesson for her. Lesson to live right. It was a chance to mend his life of crime and regret. Ray's murder to win the title of emperor was the beginning of the emergence of the tyrant Dorothea Millionaire and all her regrets. So he couldn't kill her anymore. He will not love her, and have to put up with all his behavior. Ray hugged Dorothea from behind. He asked her if she was reading a difficult book again. It seemed Dorothea was a real genius. She said that Dorothea was so small and cute, she wondered how she could be so smart too. While in Dorothea's head there was a desire to just kill her. He asks her to let him in. She kisses his cheek. Dan says that his Dorothea is so cute, so already Dorothea did not like him. He's not that sensitive. He still asked to let him in. She reflects that she never loved Ray. She told him to better learn the history of Ubera on his own. He neglected to say that he was not as smart as Dorothea. From Dorothea's point of view, her brother had nothing in his head. But he had everything just because of that crown prince title. He asked with a big smile. Doesn't he get tired of sitting all day? Dorothea thought she got more than she did just because he was born a prince. He invited her to go play. He was surprised that he was so peaceful and replied that he would not go. If he wants to go, then let him go alone. He wouldn't give up and said that he wanted to play with her. A servant comes and tells His Highness the Prince that it is impossible to distract the princess during her studies. He became sad. The maid saw the book in Dorothea's hand and was surprised. She asked her if she had studied the history of Ubera. She bent down to take a look, and said it seemed it was about the light spirit stone. The maid then asked if she knew that the spirit stone that the first emperor had was lost during Teresia's time. Dorothea refers to the maid as the nanny and says that she was wrong because the light spirit stone disappeared at that moment. And after all, there is a difference of almost 100 years between the eras of Teresa and Croesus. The nanny was already confused by the historical background of the kingdom, while her brother is happy that Dorothea is so cool. The nurse asked her if she had learned anything about the millionaire family. How can she be so smart? Dorothea was sorry and thought it showed. She should feign ignorance. The governess stated that His Majesty the Emperor was only obliged to hear about his knowledge. Dorothea was surprised by his words like that. The nurse said that there was no need to report to His Majesty the Emperor. Emperor Carnan Millionaire, in other words, was his father. To him, the word father seemed foreign, as if it came from a language he did not know. He only knows the translation, but do not understand the true meaning, even if it is flesh and blood. He meant nothing to Dorothea, because he couldn't afford to inherit the millionaire family. His mother, Empress Alice, died after giving birth to him. Carnan ignored him because his birth caused the death of his beloved wife. He used to try desperately to attract Carnan's attention. He pretended to fall and try to show intelligence. He tries hard to be better than Ray, but he never paid any heed to it. But Ray was different from him. Without doing anything, he was rewarded and was able to eat with Carnan. Carnan could smile just with all the questions from him. Why does he love Ray, who is stupid, careless, and doesn't know anything more? Why did he try so hard? Just ignore it. Is it because he was not elected? Dorothea hated Raymond. She really hates him. He was only satisfied after seizing everything he had. A glass fell on the floor and broke. She ends up attacking Ray. She was stopped by the maid. She could only rest easy when he tortured her properly and took her things. The father, with a hateful look, gave orders to lock Dorothea in the room for a month. And the further their relationship. The longer his relationship with Carnan, the worse. He just wants to be loved, but his life is not worth loving. Like a bat misses the moon. Her love is always one-sided and unrequited. That's how his anger and hatred grow the seeds of evil. Envy and envy. Arbitrary, greedy and greedy. Everything continues after the arrival of the tyrant Dorothea Millionaire, even though all those reasons are meaningless now. Now he realized that blaming others for his sins was meaningless. It must be because he was the one who was wrong for not being sweet. Now it doesn't matter. He no longer hoped for Carnan. In fact, it's not bad to live without this shadow. Living well is also comfortable. Back to the present. Dorothea was still reading a book. While Dorothea was contemplating what to read to her, the nurse stood beside her and thought that the emperor would surely be delighted to see the princess he longed for. It's very sunny and warm today outside. Dorothea was walking in the garden with the nurse. The nurse suggested he take a walk somewhere. He pointed a direction. Today, to relax a bit, the maid pointed to the garden, which was surrounded by a fence and full of all kinds of plants and greenery. Dorothea, who saw that, was immediately shocked and fell silent when she saw it. It was a garden made by Carnan for his wife, Alice, who missed her hometown. In his previous life, he also used to go there often. Been a long time. But why suddenly the nanny took him there? Dorothea wondered. And when the two of them were walking in the garden, suddenly they heard a servant greet His Majesty the Emperor. Dorothea turned and saw her father clearly. It could be seen from him that he was also unhappy to see the princess. He looked at her sullenly. Dorothea immediately grew alert and wondered if she had done something stupid that was no worse than Ray. If he is not polite, maybe he has done something wrong. What should he say? Finally, Carnan asked a question. Who are they who dare to enter Alice's garden? Hearing Carnan's voice, the princess thought that she was right. Can he hope to live life in a good way? Carnan asked who they were. As they dared to enter Alice's garden, the maid told him that this is Dorothea Millionaire's daughter. All he thought about was bringing his hand to his chin and quietly saying that was crazy. Dorothea heard and repeated his sentence in her head. She looked at him politely and reproached him for not even being able to greet him properly. Then he asked if he had not been taught. That Dorothea watched in his head. That this is true because he didn't have parents who would teach him. The servant frantically said that there was no way for His Majesty. He claimed that the princess was very smart and extraordinary. Karnan replied that he had doubts, because to him she looks like a little and impudent girl. The nurse tried her best to defend daughter Dorothea, in saying that it was probably only because the princess was surprised to meet him for the first time, because he shone in the etiquette class in the palace. Then he turned to Dorothea with a question. Is not that true? Then Dorothea seemed to exhale, and she started walking towards Karnan and bowed her head and body slightly while holding the hem of her dress with both hands. He greeted His Imperial Highness Millionaire very politely. The emperor asked him how old he was. The princess, who was still bowing, replied that she was 8 years old this year. He again continued the interrogation, asking what his exclusivity was. He raised his head, saying that this was just an exaggeration. From the nurse, there is nothing extraordinary about her. The nurse suddenly interrupts them, saying that it is because of Her Majesty to see the princess is simple and perceptive beyond her years. And he had studied the entire imperial lineage, but the princess was annoyed that there was absolutely no help from the maids. The emperor bowed after his words. He asked if it was true that he had studied the millionaire family lineage. So he said by testing that, if it was true, then let him tell. The princess confidently replied that the emperor must have known the royal lineage. Was there really something he didn't know about in the millionaire family tree? He aggressively asks if she really decided to check it out. The maid stood silently and awkwardly between them. The princess replied that apparently it was Her Highness who was testing her. What was the use of him telling the family tree here? He also didn't interrupt and ask, so he refused the emperor's order. In the nurse's eyes, it looked like a den of beasts. The princess finally said that she was just trying to save time. His Highness was right that he was so busy that he had never seen him since his birth. The emperor folded his arms over his chest, saying that because of that he would tell the genealogy of the royal family, only if it will benefit him. Dorothea replied that she just didn't want to waste her time. The emperor thought about it and finally said that since the nurse's words were true, then in that case he asked Dorothea to say if there was anything she wanted to say. Dorothea was surprised she didn't understand to say what she wanted. What was that for? Because within her memory, the emperor had never said such a thing to her. He suspected she was up to something. He is still silent. He pondered that before rebirth he would jump for joy. But sadly, she doesn't need anything from him now. He himself could not remain silent. He finally asked in this regard to make him the best wine with his name. He decided to ask for something that could play in his hand in the future. The emperor immediately became gloomy. He turned to the nurse and asked what she was teaching this child. Here is it appropriate for a child of this age to say such a thing? He made excuses that he never talked about alcohol in front of the princess. Then the princess intervened and said that it was not the nurse who taught her. He read about it in a book called Babalua Paintings. He said that there is a scene where Babalua and her lover are very happy to drink classic wine, described by the author as something very subtle. Hence, out of curiosity, he wanted to try a good quality wine at least once. The emperor was surprised by this answer because such a young girl read such a difficult Babalua painting. He thought about it and finally agreed. Dan said that since he wanted a fine wine with his name, then it would be prepared. So he set a condition, that if he made a mistake at least once, he would punish his nurse who lied to him to death. He gave an order to tell the family's imperial family tree. He lowered his head and pondered that perhaps he had inherited the tyrannical nature of his father. He finally said it was fine, and then he would start mentioning the first-generation millionaire family leader, because Dorothea was determined to live well. He had to protect his nanny's life. After that incident, the nurse hoped that the emperor would start caring for Dorothea. But Karnan never visited him at all. The maid called him a bad thing, but the emperor was the father of the princess. He couldn't come to her because he must be very busy with work. From what she heard from her nanny, Dorothea was just acting normal. He even told his nanny not to grieve. Moreover, Karnan wasn't that kind of person. Even though the nanny always loved her, she was actually grateful. Dorothea was actually not happy to see Karnan. In order for him to live well, he must avoid things that can irritate him. If it was in the past, Dorothea must have tried to look better than Ray, and also been punished many times by Karnan. He reflected on how stupid he was, because he entertained himself with useless illusions. and he himself is annoyed. But now he realized that for the sake of living well, he would do nothing more. Once he tries, surely what will arise is only anger and hatred. Dorothea was reading a book in the garden, and he was contemplating his thoughts, and thought about all the things the wet nurse beside him was doing. He tried to give it welfare, and as soon as he decides to do something, he will only cause her anger and discontent, so that he was pulled out of his mind, when a voice called him, and asked questions about his whereabouts. He heard Ray's voice asking where Dorothea was. When he heard that, his mood immediately deteriorated. Servant asks Prince what brought him here. He asked if Dorothea was here. The princess immediately ran away with a request that the nurse say she was not there. The maid hesitated what to say to him, and then he himself wondered where he was. Ray said that he wanted to show the princess how to handle the spirit of light. Dorothea, who was hiding behind the pillar, didn't understand why she had to see him controlling the spirit of light. Did he decide to laugh it off? Which had made him angry. The spirit of light is called a blessing that is only available to the millionaire family. But this is just an old story. We see how Ray demonstrates in front of the nurses how he can control the petals in the air and point them in different directions. Millionaire's power that can publish the sun is getting weaker, and currently only able to light a small fire. Until one day, Millionaire was born who couldn't control spirits at all. Like Dorothea, she was born into the Millionaire family, the princess who was unable to summon any spirits. Dorothea Millionaire. He was removed completely from that tradition. Then Karnan also had more and more reasons not to love her. Therefore he challenged the Almighty, and hated Ray even more. How great is the spirit of light? It's just a little firefly in a very cryptic tale of the past, and used as a basis for maintaining power. Thus he used his sword to seize the spirit's power. He ascended his own throne by ending the fairy tale era, and glorified the era of humans with blood-stained swords. But in the end, he failed. Just a few years ago, he was already executed along with his title of tyrant. It was possible that spirits could indeed determine one's ability to become emperor. At the end of his sad life, this great legend punished his proud self. Although now it doesn't matter anymore. Now he sat and thought as this little bastard who talked to the wet nurse when was he going to leave. He asked again if he didn't know exactly where Dorothea was, and the nurse regretfully said that she didn't know, not sure the prince is sad, because a friend came to him and he wanted to introduce them. Dorothea, who heard all this, assumed that maybe her friend, who must be a child of Ray's age, who was also annoying. He decides to leave Ray to wet the nurse, and he'd better take a nap. He left thinking that if he turned here, it would be difficult to get to his room without Ray knowing. The main thing is not to get caught. He turned inside and met another boy with dark hair. Dorothea fell from the crash. She dropped her book. The boy immediately apologized and asked if he was badly hurt. She looked up and instantly blushed. He thought and did not understand what he was doing here, because there was no way the man she loved more than anyone in this world, in a previous life, the man who hated her the most. How could she be able to forget him? Then we see a picture in which he looks at the hanging body of his lover. She cried and rushed to him. It was true. How could he forget her, because she was his love, his breath, and his eternity. Back to reality, the boy asked Dorothea if she was okay. He held out his hand to her and asked if she could get up. Since the day of his return, he had not forgotten her for a second. She wakes up hot with tears in her eyes and calls him by the name Theon. The boy looks at her in surprise and says he is really sorry. Did it really hurt him? Dorothea was sitting with her face in her hands. She looked at the dress and said it had gotten very dirty. He said it was his fault for not paying enough attention. He held out a handkerchief and apologized. He began to take, at least he was worried, and asked again if his leg was sprained. Would he be able to walk, or would it be better for him to call someone? He said emotionally that he really wanted to meet her and say his name. Dorothea said she missed Theon a lot, so that the boy thought that it turns out that he heard everything correctly. Did he really know her? She didn't understand. She kept crying. Tears flowed like a river. He wiped everything with this handkerchief. He reflects that there are other things that are much more important now. He asks her not to cry, otherwise his eyes will swell. He wiped the tears from Dorothea's face with his fingers. Dorothea's heart pounded. Because the person who turned and left him is now beside him, very beautifully, and he is still alive. And this is not a dream. He started to cry even more. Maybe just because he is alive means he has done his duty in this life. She smiled and told him he was someone smart, which might be the cause of his rebirth. Ray will come for Dorothea. She asks if he really hurt himself. If all is well, he is very worried. He immediately ran towards her, still with questions about what happened. She saw bruises on her knees, and her dress was dirty and wrinkled. She is still seen with tears in her eyes. He replied that nothing bad had happened. He didn't need to worry about it. Ray pounced on Theon. He grabbed her by the shoulders and asked if Dorothea was crying because of him. Theon sadly replies that it's probably because of him. He lowered his gaze and head and kept saying that it seemed like it was, and apologizing. Ray gets angry and calls Theon a real bastard. She screamed at him that she thought they could be good friends, and that Dorothea had never cried like that since she was a baby. Before he asked what he did to Dorothea, Theon is trying to justify himself to His Highness Raymond. Then Dorothea intervened and asked Ray to stop because he wasn't crying because of Theon. He lied that he just got something in his eye. He said that his eyes were covered with thorns, so that his eyes hurt. Raymond also believed. He nervously asked if everything was okay, so now he replied that everything was fine. And at the same time, Dorothea thought that she had not expected that day to come, when he would think gratefully how stupid Ray was. Ray was worried and finally calmed down how relieved he was. He asks what happened to his knee wound. Then he replied that it was just a small wound and it would heal in a moment. Theon in between realizes that it is a princess, and that she also covered up her mistakes in front of her brother. But he didn't get to meet the princess before he wondered what kind of expression was on her face. When he first saw her, Ray turned to Theon, and he sincerely apologized for misunderstanding everything. Theon smiled and said it was nothing, because he really is to blame. Ray took her by the shoulders and they stood in front of Dorothea. The prince said happily that he would display it properly, because he has a chance. He introduced his new friend in front of Dorothea, and Theon says he was rude the first time they met. Dorothea realizes that she will be introduced to Theon. He introduced Theon to him, then Theon kissed his hand. Dorothea blushed and thought that this was their new start. There is no history between them. If he forgot his mad pursuit of love, put away the suffering from the past and loved more for himself, would he treat Dorothea better in this life? She wanted to say something to him happily, but then the mood changed. Dorothea heard someone's voice calling out to Theon. He heard that someone say that he wanted to go together with Theon, so why did he go alone? Dorothea knew this voice. He turned around and recognized the girl as Theon's first and last love. In front of them was a girl with long, soft pink hair and a red sundress. The girl's name was Julia Delavigne. In his past life, Theon, who was forced to marry him, married him because of his insistence and also a family agreement. He only loved Julia until the end of his life. They have been friends since childhood and have shared their affection for a long time. They matched perfectly like a pair of puzzle pieces that had no gaps for Dorothea to fit into. That's how his life used to be. He's the one who keeps chasing after Karnan's affection but can't get it. She's the one who keeps chasing Theon's love but can't get it too. Live without love. Even after marrying him, Theon is still looking for Julia. He exchanged dozens of letters with Julia without her knowledge. Her radiant face at that time, she never showed him. Dorothea wished Julia would disappear from Theon. He wished Julia would just die. When his trusted men stage a fake crime and bring news of Julia's death, he is elated. Dorothea had thought Theon would finally come to her, but he would prefer death to be free from it, and left with Julia. His ambition was the cause of his death. His selfish love had killed him. Can it still be called love? Even now it feels like his heart is still being torn apart. The boy turned to Julia. Ray informs that Julia has come to wait for him. Julia replied that she was very bored. Ray introduces Julia Delavigne to Dorothea and says she has come with Theon from Fridi territory. Julia greets daughter Dorothea. He only answered a brief hello. He kept thinking that these two were together even in this life. He wondered what kind of expression he had on his face right now. He must have been filled with this feeling, so it looks unpleasant. He said he remembered that he had something to do, so he will go to the room. Ray asked Dorothea if she would play with them, but he just walked away without answering. Ray doesn't understand what's wrong with him. Suddenly, Theon and Julia also looked at each other in disbelief. He goes to his room. Dorothea thought that the crown prince had died at her hands, his love that prefers death to avoid it, and the woman who was loved by his love who died because of false accusations. Among them, there is no place for him. She hurriedly went to her room with tears in her eyes from her horrible self-confession. Waitress asks if she wants to play with her friends. Dorothea lay in a dark and empty room. She replied that she didn't want to because she was tired. The maid complied and said there was nothing that could be done, and let her rest, and she would wake Dorothea before dinner. The maid leaves. Dorothea lay holding a handkerchief with Theon's name in her hand, with his name embroidered on the edge of the fabric. She hugged this handkerchief tightly to herself and wept bitterly. On a sunny day. Outside, the sun was shining brightly. There are no clouds in the sky. In the palace, Dorothea was sitting reading a book, and seen behind him there is someone who is walking back and forth, and he walked quickly and with a loud voice. An annoyed Dorothea closed the book and asked Ray if he couldn't just sit still. He replied that he was very worried, because today he would officially become the crown prince. He says right, he will become the crown prince of Ubera. This is a very important role. He said that this made him even scarier. He turned to Dorothea and asked if he looked like the crown prince. Dorothea looked at Ray and saw in him only a cute, whimpering puppy. With all his looks, he replied that no, he looked like a fool today too. He was sad and asked if this was true. Dorothea asked him to do something with her face first. He asks how to do it with his face. He squeezed his cheek with his palm and asked if it was necessary. According to Dorothea, that this desperate fool should run the empire. He has many worries. Ray said that it would be nice if he didn't become the heir, but him. Dorothea. She tensed and gripped the book. He kept arguing that surely he wouldn't tremble, but proudly passed the ceremony because he was smarter than her, more talented than him. She was sure she would make an excellent empress. Dorothea simply replied that she didn't know how to summon spirits, so he can't. Ray, who smiled and actively said he knew. He would also soon be able to summon spirits. Who, if not the clever Dorothea to call them? This carefree simplicity was like poison to Dorothea. He thought that he was behaving like this only because he was ignorant, and will gradually understand everything over time. He would understand the full weight of carelessly thrown words. Ray asked him if he could wish him good luck. As soon as he answered with a question, why did he do that? He begged her because if his Dorothea wished him luck, he was sure he would. Dorothea simply replied happily that she had just failed. He was annoyed. He said that Dorothea was so cold she asked to hug her sister once. Dorothea just nonchalantly tried to leave to hide somewhere from him. He just ignored all her requests and pleas. A maid informs that Ray has to come in soon, which worries him even more. The crown handover ceremony was the event when the next emperor's successor was mentioned. It could be considered as one of the major events in the empire. But if he thought about it, that he had not noticed before. But now everything seemed so simple to him. He looked around and concluded in his head that Karnan was not as vain as he seemed. But he still had doubts. Maybe he's just a spender. He began to remember something that was in childhood. It must be here that they announced that His Imperial Highness was entering the hall. Even this event seemed extravagant to Dorothea. The emperor begins his monologue by saying that the whole empire will be illuminated by the light of the noble millionaire's goodness. Now Dorothea has stopped experiencing any emotions, which he looked at the scenery and thought that there must be a spiritual stone missing in this staff. He thought and reflected that the stone fragment was found right before the execution. He heard something similar, but can't remember what exactly happened. The monologue that continues in the background, the princess continues thinking that it doesn't matter and has nothing to do with her now. After all, they announce that now they will continue the ceremony. The door opened with little Prince Ray entering, smiling and a confident look, and Dorothea hoped that she would not make a mistake. Ray caught her eye and immediately broke into a big smile. Dorothea raised her index finger in a refusal sign. He thinks why she is making such stupid face.
He was trying to tell her to look ahead and walk properly. He looked and just nodded his head. Dorothea was even more clueless as to why he was nodding his head. Is he really that stupid? Suddenly, all the spirits gathered at him. He tries to explain to Ray that he usually controls spirits. He believed that now such a fool became the crown prince. He wouldn't make a mistake like that. A large crown is worn on Ray's appearance.
And Dorothea came to the conclusion that she had no right to such thoughts. But at least it would be better if the real hero became the wise emperor this time. The ceremony continues. Many guests congratulated the crown prince on the event. The emperor walked in front with the crown prince, and Dorothea walked alone behind. All that was said to them was a sign of congratulations. The princess did not hear. He reflected to himself that for him, the last name millionaire was like a curse. The lady distracted her and looked at Dorothea and said that with time she looked more and more like the late empress. Others agreed and said that he really is a complete copy of himself and his youth. The fact that Dorothea always had to fight such situations, and also the emperor answered that woman they were talking nonsense. They only apologized for their words and their rudeness. And the fact that he couldn't leave this place. Even when he was openly rejected by Karnan, and Ray was at the center of any conversation and was treated no better than a candle hanging on the wall. But he couldn't go anywhere, because he's a millionaire. Before rebirth, he would stand in the center and start to boast about his merits, while humiliating Ray, the stupid crown prince, thus emphasizing how stupid Ray was. Ray turned to him and told him to go to them. Dorothea kept thinking that there wasn't a single thought like that in her head at the moment. He didn't understand what was so funny about all of this. He just wanted this time to end. He kept calling Ray stupid, and this was his place. She could claim him even if he called her problem wouldn't be solved, and because she should just be standing here. It would be better to prepare a place for him to sit. Theon comes up to him and says he's bored. That's right, he turned around and immediately recognizing the voice, he saw Theon dressed beautifully in front of him with a red bow around his neck and a glass in his hand. Theon approached Dorothea with questions because he was bored. Once Dorothea wondered why he was here. Thought he would be with Julia. He held out a glass with a drink and asked her to drink it, because he saw that he had not drank anything for a long time. Kaylee, he smiled, broadly reached out his hand for the glass and thanked Theon. He thought in his head that this was Theon's pomegranate juice. He even felt it was a pity to drink it. Theon said that he was very proud of His Highness Prince Raymond. He takes great pride in his open-mindedness. He asked again about Ray, who answered in the affirmative that yes, that he said that Dorothea studied all the real lore of the Empire. Dorothea said he was not a great person. He says it looks like they will be able to meet at the episteme soon. He held the glass in his hand and thought about the words episteme. It was the best academy in the Empire where only the most outstanding talents were trained, as well as the main place where the descendants of noble families studied together gained connections for the future. There were people not only from Ubera, but also from neighboring lands descended from noble families who came to the episteme. But it's not like Ray who can easily enter this academy. Dorothea, due to the fact that she could not outshine the crown prince, could not enter the episteme. One day he tried to fight this going outside the palace and throwing a stone at the episteme. But this rock broke the window and hit Duke Bronte's eldest son on the head, and after that Karnan locked Dorothea in the palace, then ended their relationship with Karnan. He thought that there was no need to repeat this twice. He had long since abandoned any claim. He tells Theon out loud that he's not going to the episteme. He asked how much because she was a princess. He began to say that he was sure of something for sure, but he expected to see the Emperor with Ray. Dorothea noticed this, and thought that Theon was smart enough that he knew how to keep his mouth shut when he needs to, and that he understands exactly what the situation is here. He was sad because he didn't want to show himself to Theon the way he had decided to. To shift the subject to another topic, he smiled and started to say that, come to think of the weather today, he didn't finish because Julia shouted that Theon was summoned by Julia's Archduke, and he smiled brightly and waved at them. Theon apologizes to the princess, saying that it looks like it's time for him to go. He replied that there was nothing to do in his head. He thought Julia had come to get Theon. Theon said goodbye and said that they would meet later. He was left alone again among the many people. He thought he needed to go to the room too. Amidst the hubbub and noise, he approached the emperor saying he had something to say. But suddenly a man accidentally pushed her and spilled pomegranate juice on her dress. As a result, the spilled juice stained the entire front of his clothes. The first thing Dorothea thought about that was Theon giving her some pomegranate juice. The man panicked and didn't know what to do. The emperor looked and asked what was going on here. The man apologizes and says it is his mistake. The emperor ordered Dorothea to apologize to the man. She didn't understand why the emperor urged her to say it quickly. Everyone in the hall fell silent in anticipation. Ray intervened, speaking to the emperor, saying it was Dorothea who was suffering here. In front of him, looking down, Duke Bronte was clueless and worried because he understood very well that he was clearly to blame here. Dorothea said in her mind that she must apologize to Duke Bronte because she was a much more important guest than her own daughter. Duke said it was okay because it was his fault. He kept thinking and wondering what was so hard about some kind of apology, because Karnan had been behaving like this for more than a day or two. The Duke asked Dorothea to raise her head. She kept thinking that if she remembered everything and got angry, it will only make it worse. So he just needed to take it for granted. The emperor ordered Robert's servant to escort Dorothea because her clothes were dirty. She listened and bowed before him. The princess thought it was a good thing because she had a reason to go, and that was enough. She left with the maid, but decided to accidentally turn around. He saw Theon and Julia standing up in complete shock. They show that they are worried. She asked herself if she had seen an awkward princess who had lost the last bit of her authority. He wanted her not to look at him, not to see him like that. A glass of pomegranate juice full of red love spilled again and became a feeling that littered it. He sat alone in his room again. He hugged himself and knelt to endure such feelings. No attitude towards him, and apologizing and putting aside the dignity that is tolerable for him. But one look from Theon made him feel like he was being turned upside down. How cute it was, because he knew that Theon would never love him. He understood what had to be let go. Anyway, it seemed like everything inside was on fire when he saw them together with Julia. He decided that he had to let Theon go as soon as possible. Someone knocked and asked if he was okay. Ray stands outside the door and says he came because he was worried. He didn't ask her to come to him. Dorothea was angry and screamed at him to leave her alone and go back to her place. Ray insists that he is not leaving because he is here. In the room, he made it clear that he was not interested in the coronation ball. So let them play together. At these words, Dorothea flew into a rage, leaving the room, and ordered her to open her ears and listen carefully. Ray was scared of her. She screamed at her that she couldn't go from there just because she wasn't interested in the party. Since he is the crown prince, act like the crown prince. Don't think about continuing to play and do the real work. Dorothea added that she didn't need his worries. He begs to leave her alone. An emotional Dorothea grabbed Ray's collar, while Ray didn't know what to say. He continues that if he does not understand. Suddenly, Theon and Julia come up to them and see him holding Ray by the collar. Theon, who was shocked, came forward to the two of them and then asked if he was okay. Dorothea just looked at Theon in silence and confusion. He looked terrified. Dorothea just stared at him in silence. Ray said he brought Theon and Julia to play together. He released Ray and walked into the room, then slammed the door. Dorothea just stood in the door at first, and then she fell to her knees. He remembered the frightened expressions on Theon's and Julia's shocked faces. He wondered to himself, starting from where the error lies. Dorothea felt that now she looked pathetic and unloved. Now what did they think of him? Dorothea hated herself. He was determined he must live well more than anyone. That was the way to atone for his sins. After that incident, he couldn't get out of bed for several days. He had a fever, and his body ached. Meanwhile, the nurses who took care of her kept calling her their unhappy little princess. Dan said that he should get well as soon as possible. Even though it was painful, but he had to endure. He opens his eyes, repeating the line that he has to be better than anyone. He didn't finish and fell asleep again. Now that was all he could do. So several days passed, where Ray does not come to him. He was in his room, on his bed reading another book. She thought she hated him now that he screamed at her like that back then. She thought he was bothering her, so she was even happy. But his mind was distracted. He saw someone out of the corner of his eye. He saw Ray hiding from behind the wall. Dorothea asked Ray what he was doing. He was frightened by the question that came out of her mouth and said that she brought him a present. Dorothea said there was no need. Ray said that he would definitely like this gift. He opened the basket and said that these were the first tomatoes he had grown. It turned out that he had secretly planted a garden behind the palace. Dorothea clearly did not expect such a gift, and it was obvious he wasn't happy about that. Ray nervously asked if they had pretty colors. Ray added that he grew pumpkins and eggplants too. If it is fruitful, then he will give it to Dorothea. While Dorothea sighed, he thought that the crown prince who entered the Episteme Academy was wasting his time gardening. Then Dorothea asked Ray, so she assumed maybe Ray didn't study and grow vegetables in the garden. Ray was shocked and said that he was also studying. Dorothea sighed heavily and thought that someone tried their best to win against her. And unlike Dorothea, she got everything easy. He just played his all-time favorite game and replaced the rightful crown prince. Ray was worried and said that he really studied hard. He asks her if she is mad and apologizes. He muttered that he refused last time, and he begged her to play with him. He clasped his hands into his palms, waiting for a response. Dorothea relented and called out to him. He listened to her intently. Dorothea finally said that in this way, he would not be able to become a good emperor. After all, Dorothea decided to live better than anyone this time. Ray scratched his head and agreed, saying it was true. Dorothea still thought that somehow wanting to not let him become emperor was just because he couldn't escape the fate of a tyrant. Ray asked him to try tomatoes. They might taste good. The tomatoes looked fresh, and as soon as he takes it, and of course in Episteme, he will try his best and will be a great big brother. He smiled at her happily. Dorothea turned away from him and thought that it would be better if this fool did his job better. She muttered again with hope and asked if he didn't want to come out. Sometimes he said that he thought it was stuffy for him to sit in the palace all the time. Dorothea thought that after all, if she thought about it, she had never been out of the palace until now, because he didn't even study in Episteme. But in his previous life he was very bored, so that now he is not even curious. But he already knew all this. Ray had said loudly and confidently that he had never been outside the palace, and it was stuffy sitting inside the whole time. Last time they stopped at the market, and there was a lot of goods from different parts of the continent. Dorothea was silent. He kept saying that if he went outside, he was sure that he would like it too. And he'll feel like he knows so much because he's so smart, so maybe they'll go out with him. Here Dorothea interrupts. She says she doesn't want to leave the palace. Ray, almost with tears in his eyes, asked why he wouldn't. She said she just didn't want to. After that, Ray always followed Dorothea around with offers to go out together. He simply replied that he didn't want to. And Ray is not going to give up. He's been begging and begging Dorothea. He thought that he would settle down if he refused. However, when he opened the book, he found a note asking him to leave together. And Ray's happy face immediately appeared. Dorothea decided she couldn't take it anymore and finally agreed. Ray was of course delighted, but here Dorothea made a condition that she would go alone. He can go with a nurse or a chaperone, but he wasn't going to go with Ray. Ray was sad, but he agreed anyway because Dorothea agreed to go outside. Then the nurse told the princess how beautiful it was. Did Dorothea apologize and ask if she should go out dressed like that? She replied that of course because it suited her so well. Dorothea was wearing a long pale blue and purple dress with flowers and floral ornaments tucked into her loosely tied hair. Dorothea said that she was very uncomfortable. The nurse said that she really wanted to put these clothes on her, and finally the day had come when she would be able to see the shine of the clothes when she walked by. The nurse concluded that she was so happy. He took Dorothea's hand and told them to leave quickly before he changed his mind. Dorothea already regretted that she decided to go out. They find themselves in a market full of people. As soon as the thought crossed Dorothea's mind that there were a lot of people here, the maid confirmed her thoughts with a question since there were a lot of people here. The nurse suggested holding her hand tightly so she wouldn't get lost, and held out her hand to Dorothea. The princess at first thought that she was not a child. Although not now, she is of course still a child. He held the nurse's hand. In his previous life he had never walked hand in hand with anyone. Here he is turning his face away from the nurse as he is embarrassed. Nurse asks to see her coming in and asks what is she seeing for the first time from here. He saw an endlessly glistening sky with a sea that was all bright blue and green. He looks at all areas of how people work and talk, how people walk near the fountain. He remembers in his past life when there was a war. The weary city and the streets of people that looked more like corpses in his memory was a wind soaked with the smell of blood. He looked at the entire cityscape now and concluded that this was what an empire without a tyrant would be like. The nurse drew Dorothea's attention to the square where musicians were giving a performance and suggested taking a look at it once. Dorothea wondered if she could enjoy this world a little. He squeezed the nurse's hand tighter, and they walked towards the field. From the corner, a suspicious man is seen grinning. 9-year-old daughter Dorothea. He lay tied up on the dirty floor. His eyes were also tied. He couldn't see anything. There is a conversation going on in the background. Turns out he was kidnapped for ransom. 2 crooks are sitting at the table and eating chicken with appetite. And the 2 are discussing that some girls wear clothes that are more expensive than their entire house is worth, which makes them mad. Dorothea thought that after rebirth she had never practiced the sword. He didn't expect that such a thing would happen. Previously, 4 days ago, when he was walking with his nanny in town. The nurse enthusiastically asked how a princess could be so cute. Dorothea looked at herself in the mirror. He was wearing a wizard's hat. The nurse admired every picture and offered to buy them all. Which Dorothea asked to wait, but the nurse dragged her elsewhere because it was fun there. Dorothea wished she hadn't gone out again. They walk quietly. On the way, the nurse offers to buy his favorite book before returning to the palace. Since they were out, he said if he went down that alley they would see a bookstore. From such a proposal, Dorothea already had a desire to buy a book. The nurse also suggested after going to the bookstore to go have a delicious dessert. And it's such a short way that nobody's here at all. The wet nurse kept saying she wanted to see Dorothea happy. But they were followed by a man with a stick and hit the nurse on the head with it, so he fell unconscious to the ground. Dorothea tried to understand what was happening and wanted to help the nurse, but a handkerchief filled with poison had already been brought up to her nose and mouth. He slowly lost consciousness, and the last thing he heard was an offer to go out for dessert with the nurse. That's the story, and now she's lying like this in some kind of kidnapper's basement. It is hard to imagine a more sad sight. He thought it would be fine even if he died early. But still he didn't want to die at the hands of such a villain. They would need time to prepare everything and send it to the Red Well. Dorothea heard this with such shock that she was unconscious for 4 whole days. He thinks why he has no strength and is very thirsty. He thought that because they had let go of the wet nurse to bring them money, but there was no news yet. And what will happen next will surely be his death. He assumed that it was possible that Karnan would not want to save him. He thought that instead of wasting money, it would be better to throw away this useless self. Dorothea could not hope for Karnan. Dorothea made a sound and both turned to her, assuming she was awake. He said out loud that he could see nothing. This method is out of style. He ordered them to let him go. A man approaches him. She thought that first she needed to pretend to be a weak little girl. Man untied his eyes. He innocently greeted him and politely asked the uncle who he was. He smiled, calling her a cute little girl. He introduces himself as Uncle Tutu. He thought that the 2 of them were kidnappers, but they looked like some market bandits who had rolled out of nowhere. He asked sweetly again if she was really going to be his new nanny. Now she replies that no, of course she's not a nanny. Dorothea made an innocent face and asked if he was really Dad's friend. And in his head he was just angry that Dorothea Millionaire's daughter was forced to behave like that. The man laughs and says it is true. He's a friend of his father. Dorothea asked if she could then call him Uncle Tutu, to which she happily agreed and allowed. And in Dorothea's mind, she thought she was going to kill them. She was told that she was as beautiful as a doll because she was a child of royalty. He recalled the old days of saying that she was beautiful, where someone said that he was ready to do anything just to make her smile at him. The lips of the man who kissed her hand and asked her to smile. At least once there used to be one person who repeated the same thing to him over and over again. He concluded that of course he didn't like the way he looked. But he didn't seem so terrible to other people. He pretended to look around and asked where they were. He replied that they were at their uncle's house. He looked at her face and asked about the scar above her eyebrow. What is it, and is it cool? Tutu decided to tell the whole story. He said that before Uncle fought with terrible villains 17 against 1. But the only usable weapons were his own fists. But one of these cowards took a knife from under his clothes and struck him in the heart. But he was able to dodge. Then he finally said that this was nothing, because after that, Uncle Tutu drove the enemy to the forest where he met a bear. Dorothea, who was sitting next to her, just tried to listen carefully and clapped her hands in admiration, while inside he thought that he could write a better book. But thanks to this, Dorothea had time to check. He pondered and came to the conclusion that first the situation was unfavorable. His stomach is growling. He tugged at the hem of his uncle's shirt and said in a tone that he wanted to eat. He called out that their little mistress was hungry and turned to Danny and told him she was hungry. He just replied nonchalantly with a question, and so what was said. They had lunchtime, and the girl had not eaten for a long time. He sighed and said fine to her, as if they were holding a children's camp here. Dorothea saw delicious sausages, scrambled eggs, bread, and a whole chicken with lettuce. He thought they were enjoying a delicious meal and dreamed of the money they would get thanks to his kidnapping. He felt disgusting, of course, but he hadn't experienced such a strong hunger for a long time. Tutu picked him up and put him on the table. Like any child, he asked her where she was sitting and let her go. She told Tutu to calm down. Did he decide to play with it? He tried to justify himself, and Dorothea made pleading and pitying eyes on him. By this time, Dorothea was not feeling well and asked herself if it was because she had not eaten for 4 days. That's why he felt that way. He ordered the tutu to tie him to the pole, but he refused. Then one of them put a knife to Dorothea's throat and said he wasn't her uncle, but a kidnapper. He explained that his reason for kidnapping Dorothea was because he couldn't stand the sight of a rich kid like him. He was hit by pushing him against the wall with his back touching the wall. Seeing that, Tutu said that Danny was too outrageous. But Danny interrupts him and says later he will kill him, so what's too much? Or did the little girl want to die first? Dorothea was left alone. But suddenly Danny screamed in fear. Tutu also did not understand what happened. Danny said that there was something under the table with eyes twinkling in the darkness. Dorothea wondered what had frightened them so much, even though it was just a scorpion. He thought that there were no scorpions in the capital in that case. Meanwhile, Tutu and Danny get scared and pass the responsibility of killing the scorpion to each other. Dorothea thought she was hungry here, and they were screaming here. He suggested to the kidnappers that if he caught the scorpion, would they give him his bread and milk. They couldn't believe it, and asked again if he would catch the scorpion. Dorothea replied that she only needed 2 sticks. They agree, but only if he catches the scorpion. Danny's command and Tutu let go. He removed it with the cover, then gave her the chopsticks. He thought that he had seen a stick. He didn't understand why the scorpion scared them so much. He holds the scorpion's tail with this stick and informs that he finally caught it. Both of them told him to throw it away or kill him. Dorothea said that she did not know how to kill. He was so hungry that he had no strength in his hands. Danny tells him to throw it away, and once he throws it, they will give him the food. He held out the scorpion to them, and he asked them to be able to give them food tomorrow and the day after. They just quickly agreed. He went with this scorpion, down the long stairs. He understood why it was dark the whole time because they were underground. He went out and saw the desert. He now understood why their guard was so lax. It was because there were no directions at all in that vast wasteland. Dorothea wondered where the village was located. Does anyone know where he is? If this was the case, then he couldn't just run away without a plan. How can he find hope there? While the two were discussing something enthusiastically, Dorothea was eating bread. He thought that they still kept their promise, and Dorothea hoped another scorpion would appear. Tutu shouts to Danny that the princess has disappeared in the capital. Then Dorothea saw the two of them and said that someone had kidnapped her. Danny understood something and told Tutu to follow him. Dorothea secretly wondered who it was, but it was best to keep things a secret. If only for the welfare of the imperial court. If the two wanted to stick around, then they wouldn't give it to the palace. He got up from the table and thought that waiting for Karnan was a crazy idea. Then he found a knife and decided that this would be enough. He overhears a conversation where they are discussing some future plans. They debated whether to take his life since he was still a child. But at the same time, she is a princess. If he survives, he will betray them. And they will. The two end up in a cemetery. They decided that one would go get 2 camels, and the others will deal with the girl. At this moment, Dorothea realized that her fate was sealed. He saw his reflection on the blade of the knife, so he had no choice but to take the knife. Danny suddenly opens the door and says they are really in trouble, but he saw that the room was empty. He hides behind the door. When he looks for it, then she decided to attack him with the knife. She realized that there was little chance. There is only one way to win, because he was at a disadvantage. He swung and only scratched his back with the knife. He turned to her. He didn't finish his thought because Danny grabbed him by the neck, but Dorothea wanted to stab her hand with a knife. But Danny let go of the knife from his hand and held it tight. The knife just fell to the floor. Dorothea has no strength, so she can't attack. If he was a little stronger. Danny screamed, and that he just wanted to let her die in peace. He tells her not to Mlawana, because no matter how much he tries, he couldn't do anything. From these words, Dorothea calmed down and thought about the phrase. Was there really nothing she could do? He was getting angry. His teeth were chattering from these thoughts that no matter how much he tried, he couldn't beat Ray and couldn't get into episteme. He kicked Danny in the stomach, so he leaned back. He continues to emotionally reflect on all the failures, that he has not been able to attract Karnan's attention. She remembers Theon and concludes that she doesn't love him either. He took the knife in his hand, and again he remembered that in the future the subject he trusted would also have to kill him. He stabbed Danny with a knife. All he could hear was his screams of pain. He lay curled up and held the leg that was pierced by the knife. Danny begs him not to kill him. Dorothea saw those eyes again, the gaze he had often seen before his rebirth. He seemed to see a monster. He wonders why. He just wants to live. He finally spoke out loud and asked that she be left alone and that she promised to be a good girl. He turned around and thought again why everyone couldn't just leave him alone. Now he just wants everyone to let him live to die. He went to the desert. He coughed from the wind and realized that the sun had already set, and it was getting dark. He was cold because there was no light in this desert. This helplessness frightened him. He thought that if he could control the spirit of light, it would be better for him than now. But then he thought that not if Ray was where he is now. Everyone would have come to save him. He knelt down and realized that even now he was thinking about it. He thought himself ridiculous. He fell with his whole body on the sand and lost consciousness. The dark night is full of bright stars and fluffy clouds. He moved his index finger. He opened his eyes slightly and vaguely saw a bottomless desert and dark sky. He realized he had lost consciousness, wondering how much time had passed, and concluded that he would die here. He thought that to die alone. He saw stars. It is somehow too much for him. He saw a light on the horizon. He saw this light heard a voice approaching him. There was someone kneeling and calling for the princess. Dorothea thought she was finally dying, but he gave her the will to live again. He raised his hand and said softly that he was here. He had killed so many people in the past, but he still wanted to live. He thought maybe Karnan had sent them, but he also assumed that it could be the bandits again. He passed out on the sand again. People have always turned their backs on him, but only such thoughts appeared in his head. It was funny to him, of course, but he was always like that. There are maids approaching her and trying to do something. Dorothea still thought she wanted to believe that someone would love her one day. He wanted to believe that at least someone would love him. Dorothea slowly opened her eyes. He saw everything dimly at first, and then it all became clearer. He saw a ceiling with a flashing chandelier. Often he looked around in his room. The curtains looked familiar. Bedside tables, cupboards with patterned plates. He understood that he had come back here again. She remembers someone calling her a princess in the desert. So he thought, if it was the palace soldiers who found him, was it luck amidst misfortune? Then Dorothea woke up with a start. He wakes up from his sleep. He heard Karnan's voice. Yang said that the one who had kidnapped him was an unknown kidnapper. He lifted himself up and straightened his back. There, the nurse makes excuses that they are some nameless kidnappers. Karnan says, that means he was kidnapped by such a worthless bandit. All Dorothea thought she had come here because she was almost kidnapped. He thought he was his real father after all. But it turned out that he was bothering her instead. Let there be no more excitement. Dorothea heard Karnan's order. Karnan ordered his maid to find the person who leaked about it out and take care of it. Then he would subject anyone who spread these rumors to severe punishment. Then Dorothea thought that in the past, she thought Karnan hated her because she was ambitious. But even without fighting or taking Ray's property, Karnan still doesn't like him. Perhaps that was the punishment for his past cruelty. The sins of the previous life must be redeemed. Dorothea thought she should think that way, because if he didn't, he wouldn't be able to survive. He lay down the other way and covered himself with the blanket, and continued to ponder sadly. That's right. He believed that things were exactly like that. Otherwise it would be unbearable for him to endure all this in the palace. The next day, the doctor reported that the princess's fever had just gone down, and was now a bit feverish again. He said the healing process was too slow. Another waitress asked if she was okay. Dorothea thought she was seeing this babysitter for the first time. He began to say out loud that he was fine. Then Dorothea thought and compared her old nurse. Was the nurse fired? Even though it's not his fault. He is a person who is always kind and takes care of her. She was worried about him. Dorothea wished him well. Then the doctor said that it seemed better for the princess to recuperate in a quiet place to rest. The nurse said that it was still better for the princess to live in the castle, but she said again that there were good places. There is a fine imperial villa for recuperation in the Cerithian region. Somehow, hearing those words, he realized that, in other words, this was an opportunity for him to leave the palace and get away from Karnan, Ray, and Theon with Julia, who was about to go to the episteme, and also where no one will see him to train and get strong, so he doesn't suffer anymore. Because he had always been afraid. He will return to being a tyrant. So he avoided this possibility. However, if he uses his powers in the right way, maybe he can protect someone. He told the servants out loud that he was going on vacation, to live well, because he needs strength. Nanny asks how is it possible to go there alone. Dorothea replied that it was too stuffy for her here. The waiter said that he never behaved like this, so why is he being stubborn like that? Ray came up to her with flowers and asked how she was doing. Dorothea was sick of him having come every day since the day of the kidnapping. Ray asks what they were talking about. The nanny replied that they were discussing the possibility of the princess going on vacation to recuperate. Ray didn't understand what kind of break they were talking about, and the servant replied that he would go to the imperial villa in the Cerithian region. The air is cool, and it is located on the beach. The princess's mood will definitely improve as well. But Ray looked worried. Even now Dorothea's conditions seemed to be getting better, but why did she still need to go there? Dorothea said if she wanted to go there, then told Ray to get out. Then he said if somehow he felt guilty. But the kidnapping wasn't his fault, so he didn't need to keep coming to her. Then Ray said that if it wasn't for her constantly nagging him to go outside the palace, that incident definitely wouldn't have happened. Dorothea looked at him and said it didn't matter anymore because it was all in the past. Ray climbed over her with a hug and asked if she really needed to go to another royal villa. Here he asks what the problem is. He replied that then he would be there alone. Then Ray thought that instead of Dorothea going there alone, it would be better if she just went into the episteme. Ray promised to help her so he would be with her. Then Dorothea said she couldn't go there. Ray even said that if Dorothea was smart, then she could do it, and don't give up too quickly. But there is one thing Ray doesn't know, that he had tried hard to study in order to get there, but Karnan forbade him to go there. Never mind, how do you understand this stupid kid like Ray? Then Dorothea said that she had decided to recuperate, so he ended the conversation unilaterally. He said he was tired and asked Ray to leave. After Ray left, the nanny said that Raymond was acting as if he was worried about her. Dorothea knew that. He knows he's bad. It's always been like that. Thus this uninvited guest had to leave immediately. A few days later, Dorothea left. She wore only a light dress for her trip. He wore a hat on his head with a yellow ribbon around his neck. He thought that at such moments he was thanking Karnan for his indifference. He couldn't imagine that he would leave so soon. He remembers Ray crying and begging him not to go. Seeing Theon, he told him with a smile that she heard he was going on vacation. He looked at her at first rejoicing, and then thought that she didn't want to see him at all now. He sadly lowered his eyes to the ground, responding that yes, he was going to Cerithian territory. Then he asked why. He suddenly asked, she replied that honestly he came because he wanted to give her something. He said that he was relieved it wasn't too late. He reached into his pocket with his hand. Dorothea asked her question if it was really a gift for her. He said of course nothing special. He took out of his pocket 3 candies of different colors, red, yellow, and blue. He said he brought it because he was worried he would get seasick. Dorothea stared at him silently without holding out her hand. Theon awkwardly asks, maybe he doesn't like candy at all. He couldn't believe in his head if it really was for him. He answered loudly that he didn't like it. He takes the candy from her hand and thanks her for the concern. Theon blushed and sadly requested that now they would not be able to see each other, because he suddenly went on vacation so far away. He said he was sorry. These words made Dorothea blush even more. Theon then expressed hope that he would recover and return as soon as possible. Dorothea couldn't believe she was truly sorry that she was gone. He looked at the candy and agreed with her. To think that in his previous life he had never felt anything like this. Is he really Theon? But suddenly he forbade himself to think like that. He squeezed the candy in his palm and left, as well as saying that he would go better. Theon wanted to stop him, but he held himself back. Dan clasped his fists and said that he hoped that they would definitely see each other again. He's already gotten on the train and talked himself into being cool. He looked at these candies and thought that no matter how Theon thought about it, his heart was pounding. From these thoughts he smiled and hugged these sweets to himself. The sky is clear blue sea with waves, where white foam comes out along with the waves on the beach hitting the rocks. The gentle breeze pleased Dorothea. The sun is shining bright. Dorothea admired the whole scene. She wore a red dress with her hair tied in 2 ponytails. He couldn't have imagined that he would be able to breathe a sigh of relief once he left the Imperial Palace, the place where he killed Ray and then Theon died. Come to think of it, she only had bad memories in the palace. That's right, everything turned out well. There was no trace of his past when he was the tyrant of this place. He was still looking with a warm smile at the 3 candies Theon had given him. He thought maybe this is where he could start from the beginning. Someone knocked and called her princess. It was the maid of the imperial villa named Clara. It was Clara who was worried for him because she asked him to wait a bit and what if he got lost. He said it now. They should only go with him. Dorothea wondered if she was taking care of a weak princess in such a remote area. It seems because there is no other choice. But Dorothea was just a princess. His concern definitely won't last long. Clara said there was someone she wanted to introduce to her, and a man came up to him. The maid said that she would serve him under his tutelage. He is a bodyguard who will protect him. The bodyguard is named Warrior Stephen Greenwall. He was a tall man with black hair and dark skin. He has a scar over one eye. Dorothea keenly recalled the past, where he sits on his knees in front of her, and she tells him that the princess is calling him, but he is not answering her. With the sword in his hand, there was blood all around him. She called him insolent as usual. He knelt in front of him with an arrow in his stomach. This is a person who has reached the rank of vice captain. Dorothea told him that was too bad because she really wanted to face him. At a time like this, he should have prepared a wise answer. Who will be the vice captain of the light army? Hopefully he doesn't regret his decision. And died in his hands. The scene returns to the present. Dorothea looked at the soldier. He thought that this year he would be 18 years old. It means that he has not joined the Army of Light for a long time. But instead he came to the villa when he had to improve his skills to occupy a higher position. Only for the sake of this weak princess. On second thought, he felt sorry for her. Dorothea seemed to reach out her hand and said beg for her help. The maid was surprised that the princess was good at greeting people too. But all they did was stare at each other. Then Clara said if she had to shake the princess's hand, Dorothea was confused. Instead of a handshake, the guard high-fived her. Clara thought she was being impertinent in front of the princess as usual. Dorothea was already in the hall. Dorothea was sitting in the hall holding paper and pen. He thought that the fact that he had just met Stefan a few minutes ago, he shows that one wish is not enough to live well because life doesn't turn out the way he wants it to. He writes a wish list to live well, so to reach his goal, he needs to make his own criteria. However, he wonders what it means to live well in general. He thought hard and tried to think of something. A waiter approached him and asked him to try the dessert. She brought cakes and tea with milk here. Dorothea pointedly asked Clara what she needed to do to live happily and be a good person. Clara thought at first and then said that first she had to obey her parents. Dorothea said to tell him something else. Clara stopped talking and asked what he was doing. He looked at the piece of paper with the name on it and laughed. Stefan appears behind her and also tries to spy on what she is trying to write from above her. Dorothea suddenly closed the paper and asked angrily and awkwardly why they were laughing. Then Clara said that the princess was very cute and was answered by a nod from Stefan. Dorothea frowned because being a nice person didn't suit her. Then Clara asked her what she made a list like that for. Then Dorothea said she just wanted to be a good person. Then Clara offered him to massage his father 10 times. Dorothea imagined the scene and called it disgusting. Then Clara suggested again to smile 10 times a day. Dorothea thought, smile 10 times. Clara continues that smile is a blessing. Stefan nodded again in tacit approval. Dorothea thought it wasn't like she didn't want to smile. It's just that nothing can make her smile. But sure enough, he remembered Ray. Good people are usually depicted with a smile. Dorothea concluded that there was some truth in Clara's words. He smiled and wondered if it was a smile, and how to do it. He also tried to smile at both of them, but suddenly his mouth twitched. The effort had caused a spasm in his lips. Clara asked what was wrong with him. He pushed them both. He asked them to step out for a while because he wanted to think. Clara says she wants to observe from a closed door. Then Dorothea picked up a pen and wrote a list of the good people she thought she had been. The first is to smile sweetly. Both do not want other people's property, including the throne belonging to Ray, and Theon who belongs to Julia. Third, save 1,000,000 people, because saving people is a commendable deed. In his previous life, there were quite a few people who died because of him. Not only did he finish with his hands, but also those who died in battle, which he made forced laborers, and those affected by disaster, disease, and hunger. The total was probably 500,000 people. People who might have survived had Ray become emperor back then, ended up dying because of him. And to atone for all those sins, in this life, he will save twice that amount. Then Dorothea went on to write a list for living to be a good person. In addition to listening to Thanksgiving 3 times a week, and donating 1,000,000 blanc each month to charity. He looked at the list and thought that this was enough for a good life. He went out onto the balcony and looked out over the landscape, and he thought how tired he was. He looked at the shore. Then he approached the servants and told them that he was going to the sea. Stefan and Dorothea were walking along the beach. He looked at Stefan and thought that he said he wanted to go to the sea, and he followed her. But fortunately, he did not interfere and kept quiet. He took off his hat and thought how lonely it was, like there was only him alone at this time. While walking, he saw a young man sitting on the beach. He wondered who the other people living around him were, apart from the residents of the villa. He saw a blonde boy with golden eyes. He saw her crying, where tears streamed down his face. He saw him and recognized him as Ethan Bronte. She is the closest ally of the tyrant Dorothea Millionaire. He was also the most charming person and the most dangerous man she had ever known.